Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome everyone to today's event. The purpose of the event is to discuss the concept of the Anand Karaj as well as its conduct and also discuss recent events. So just a quick intro as well as disclaimer. This is an open exchange of ideas, many of which can be conflicting. If you do not wish to exchange ideas or are sensitive to such discourse, please do not attend this event. Okay, so when engaging in discussion, please be civil and respectful. Moderators will allow users to express their ideas regardless of their nature, but we request that everyone be respectful to others as they speak and do not disrupt the flow of the conversation. At any point, if you have any concerns, please message the moderators directly and do not disrupt the discussion. Each user will be given 1 minute 30 seconds to express their points, after which we will move on to the next user who wishes to speak. If you would like to speak or would like to come back and speak again, then please let us know in the text for voice section, and we will add you to the speaker queue. Users who go above the time limit will be requested to wrap it up and finish their points. So they'll be given 30 more seconds or a minute or something to wrap up their points. And those who do not respect moderator requests will be muted or possibly kicked. Is that clear to everyone?
Yep.
All right, cool. Before we get started, I would like to introduce our speakers for today. We have Pritpal Singh. Pritpal Singh, feel free to tell us a bit more about yourself as well as Sarbat.
Thank you very much for having me on today. So I'm a volunteer for an organisation based in the UK called Sarbat. It is a volunteer-led support group for LGBT Sikhs and their allies. So I'm just going to give a viewpoint on behalf of the LGBT community. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And Upkar Singh and Gagan Singh, would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
My name is Upkar Singh. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name is Gagan Singh and I am just a normal guy on Discord.
All right, and we have a special guest. We have Sharda Kaur. Sharda Kaur ji, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, all right. Hello, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. I am also with Sarbat, working with Pritpal, and I'm very excited to be here. This is my first Discord chat, and I'm looking forward to the conversation. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So we're just going to have a run through of the basic discussion points. And just again, if you guys have any questions or anything, or would like to look at the discussion points, they can be found in the question box. So the 6 main discussion points for today in order will be: number 1, what is the Anand Karaj and what is its purpose? Number 2, what is considered the correct Anand Karaj conduct? So we're going to be talking about stuff like chairs, the manner in which you walk, having it outside, inside, stuff like that. Number 3 is, what is the Sikh stance on destination Anand Karajas? Number 4, what do you think of Freedom Singh's recent wedding offerings and his recent quote-unquote scandal that went viral? So we'll be posting a video of that in case Sangot would like to see it. And we're going to be talking about those events. And then number 5 is Anand Karaj gatekeeping. So we're going to be talking about gatekeeping in terms of LGBTQ, interfaith, cultural Sikhs, and much more. So who gets to decide who can have an Anand Karaj, who cannot? What is the standard for an Anand Karaj, gay Anand Karaj, or many other things. It's surrounding gatekeeping of who can and who cannot have an Anand Karaj. And then number 6 is going to be an open Q&A where users can submit their questions in the question box. And at the end, when we're done the 5 discussion points, we can just have an open discussion regarding that. All right, so without further ado, let's get on to the discussion point number 1, which is, what is the Anand Karaj and what is its purpose? So anyone who would like to speak, feel free to, and anyone else who would like to speak after them, feel free to let us know in the text for voice section and we'll add you to the queue. So Pritpal Singh or Gagan Singh or Upkar Singh, would you guys like to? You guys can take turns, or it depends on how you guys want to go.
So I can offer an opinion, but it's not obviously going to be based necessarily on my knowledge of the Anand Karaj in depth, because obviously I'm just here to represent more the LGBTQ viewpoint. So obviously it's the joining of two people in front of Guru Sahib in order to show their commitment to one another and to Guruji. Apologies if I made any mistakes in my understanding or description of it.
Yeah, no problem, Pritpal Singh. We all have our unique own views. It's totally fine. Don't worry. This is an open conversation. Would anyone else like to give their understanding of what an Anand Cottage is and what its central purpose is? Anyone? Upkar Singh?
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So I just want to get it straight that we come from the view that lekha kathe na shutiya khin khin pulana where we always make mistakes, and we're not here to judge others. Manda kisana akhiya, right? We're just here to our own spiritual journey. Farid, we're here to look at ourselves, focus on ourselves. But again, when a Panthic issue arises like this, it's good to have debate. It's good to discuss things, right? And we see each other as brothers and sisters. So hopefully, because the words that have been said today, hopefully there's no hatred between brothers and sisters of the same Panth, right? If you believe in Guru Granth Sahib Ji, if you believe in Akal Purkh Vahiru is Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj, then you're a brother and sister. So Manda Kisana Akhiya, Pad Akhar Eho Bujjiya. Let's understand this, that we shouldn't call anyone bad. So Anand Karaj, in my understanding, which is very limited, is that Anand Karaj is for the purpose of procreation. It's for the purpose of procreation. It's not for the purpose, because Maharaj understands that family life, that your wife, your spouse, it's all Maya. It's all Maya, and these will disappear. And Maharaj makes it clear in Charitra Upakyan that our true love will always be Vaheguru, and that our spouse, Maharaj refers to a female here, that our spouse is female. This is just temporary. This is temporary, and we should respect the needs of our spouse. We should respect the needs of our family and take care of our family. But at the end of the day, the absolute level is Vaheguru. Our Vaheguru is our true love. I've gone crazy in the love of my husband, Vaheguru. So that is where I come from.
Thank you for your view, Upkar Singh. Jasleen Kaur or anyone else, would you guys like to give your thoughts on what is the Anand Cottage and its purpose?
These rocks, right?
All right. Would anyone else like to give their view before we move on to the next discussion point? All right, then. We'll move on to discussion point number 2, which is what is considered the correct Anand Cottage conduct. So go ahead.
When you see most Anand colleges happening, you'll see a lot of things now that are not as per Gurmat. Firstly, chairs and benches. That's totally against Maryada. Even in general, I mean, having benches at the back of the bar, that's another thing. But when you're having chairs, like it's some kind of catering hall, or it's a church service or whatever it is, that's not how it's meant to be. When you're in Maharaj Darbar, because Maharaj is the highest of the high, Guru Granth Sahib Ji is the Stargun Surup, is the physical form of Akal Purakh. So when you're in their Darbar, you have to abide by what the maryada is. So there is no chairs. You're meant to sit on the floor seated. And there's also another thing. So normally when the couple, the bride and groom, are going around Maharaj, they're not meant to walk. I don't think I have seen that walks like it's like a new kneel thing, unfortunately, which is happening. It was where they walk side by side, right? That's not how it's meant to be either. And there's different shabds which represent, for example, you have something called the Palledi Rasam, right? When the palla is tied and the woman is holding it, so the woman holds the palla of the man, right? And the man walks and the woman is behind, like it's not side by side. That's another thing. And also, what you will see now is you'll see when the lava are about to take place, you'll see about 5 or 6, or sometimes more, of the bride's like family members, like brothers or cousins. They'll come, and when they're taking the lava around Maharaj, they'll start to touch her and then pass it to the next person. For example, and it's meant to represent we're helping our sister here, whatever. But that's totally against Maryada, because this is meant to be a journey of the bride and the groom, and they're doing their circumambulation. I don't know how to pronounce the word, but the parikrama, right? And they're when you take the parikrama, it's just you two and Maharaj. There's no one else is meant to be present there like that, and no one else is meant to guide you through the journey, because it's meant to be yours and your husband's journey, the bride and the groom's journey. That's another thing which I've seen, which is against Maryada. And the correct Maryada is the lava are read out by the Granthi first. So the first lava is read out from Maharaj, right, just by words, and then the Kirtanis, the Ragi sings, they'll sing the exact first love that's read out, and while they're singing it, the couple is meant to walk around slowly, right? And they're meant to walk slowly, not too fast, as to they don't complete the circle when the Ragi Singh hasn't finished the love yet. They're meant to reach there, and if they get there early, it's not that bad. But I've seen this sometimes, because I play tabla, right, at weddings, and I've seen this sometimes where they'll do the full circle, they'll mutatik, they'll sit down, and half the love hasn't even been hasn't even finished singing it. The Dagi Singh, they're still singing it. So you're meant to mutatik only when the love is finished. When the love's finished, then you mutatik because that represents that you've heard what Maharaj has said and you accept it. You mutatik and you bow down and say, Maharaj, I accept what upadesh, what hukum, what command you're giving me. I accept this. Then you mutatik to say that I accept it, and then the same happens again 4 times. So that's the Maryada, and obviously there's Kurmai as well. There's the Palla Rasam, and then after the Anand Karaj, there's Biya Hua Mere Babla. These are like shabds that are meant to be sung as per Maryada as well. So yeah, that's the Maryada of Anand Karaj.
And Pritpal Singh, you had a question. Feel free to ask.
Yeah, I just had one question. Thank you for explaining that. But my grandparents' generation said that when they had their weddings, they didn't do the lama around Guruji at the time. It was normal that they used to just sit before Maharaj and have the lama read one after the other. Do you know if and why that happened, and when it then changed to us walking around Maharaj?
May I answer?
Yes, of course. Yeah, feel free to.
So perhaps, again, it's a perhaps, we do have historical sources, evidence, textual evidence about the Guru's marriages, the Anand Karaj, and that was going around. Okay? So, maybe, right, again, maybe that particular Anand Karaj was due to a certain custom in a certain region or a certain belief system of Sikhi, right? Because again, is village by village. In India, in Punjab, many villages have their own custom, many regions have their own custom. Just perhaps it was that. But we do have textual evidence that the Gurmat way of doing Anand Karaj is going around Maharaj and keeping Maharaj on your right side. showing respect. Because when we keep, if you noticed, when a Katha Vajik does Katha, Gurbani is always on their right side. They're showing respect to Gurbani. So that's the reason why they go around keeping Maharaj on their right side doing Prakarma. Prakarma is very important in Sikhi. So I don't know. Maybe I never heard of that in my from the Nand Karaj, even from the past. My mother, my grandma, they've all did Prakarma, Lava. They all run around. So maybe it was just a regional thing. Maybe it was just a certain cultural thing. Specific to that region, specific to that Raqqa, specific to that area, district. So I don't know. That's the answer I could give for that.
It's just that both sets of my grandparents are not from, they're from Jalandhar, but they're not close by in Jalandhar. And we are from a mainstream Sikh family, so it's not part of any offshoot or anything. So there is, everything. We go to a Singh. I grew up going to a Singh Sabha Gurdwara and stuff like that, which has been perfectly normal for my grandparents would have been there, establishing those Gurdwara here in the UK as well. So they certainly weren't from any offshoot or a cultural, there wasn't a cultural custom. But the other thing is, until independence of India, apparently it was also quite normal for children to be married, which was one of the reasons that was given that they didn't do Parakarma, because when they had child marriages for children as young as sort of 10, 12 years old, I've even heard of people within the sort of the family who were older, who said that they remember that they used to have to give like a watermelon or something like that to the children to sit down in order to be able to. So they weren't actually even aware of the fact that they were getting married at the time.
Yeah, but then again, that's not really a big point of argument, right? Perhaps you mentioned child marriages. Perhaps because they marry children and then they'll get together later in their lives when they're ready. Because of the life was you never knew, right? So they're scared of the children dying.
That's absolutely right. They wouldn't. So the girl wouldn't go to her in-laws' house until she was of age. But the marriage used to happen at a young age. So a relative of mine who is probably about 95 now, she got married at the age of 10 and didn't go to her in-laws until 7 years later when she was 17.
Maybe that's just was your grandparents, were they children when that happened? Perhaps that might be specific to children.
No, this wasn't my grandparents. My grandparents were older when they got married. My certainly on my dad's side, my gran was 15, and my grandfather was older. He was 25. So it was different for them. But this was another relative who was 10, and there are others that I've spoken to as well who've said that they got married at a young age to the point that they didn't even know. And just one other point, you talk about the keeping Maharaj to your right side. I've been to some Nihang weddings as well, where I was a bit alarmed because I've never seen them go around the left.
Yeah, they go around the left, yeah.
So they go around the left.
Yeah, the reason is that they're armed, or their right hand is for fighting, and they should never show the right hand towards Vaheguru. Yeah.
Yeah, and you'll even see that when you have Shatra Prakash in front of Maharaj, Godra that follow a different that are not Nihang Singhs, their Shatra will be pointing down away from Maharaj, but in a Nihang Singh Godra you see them pointing towards Maharaj. And both of them are correct, because with the Nihang Singh Sampradaya, they're saying that our Shastras point towards the Kalpuruk, right, because that's where our source comes from. On the other side, they'll say that Shastra points away because we're not trying to fight against Maharaj. See, so, but both are valid, both are correct, yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course. Go ahead.
I wanted to know if there is, because I'm still new to this. Is there a code of conduct around who walks first? Because from what I'm understanding, the idea is that the couple walk one behind another when they walk around the Maharaji. So they follow each other rather than walking side by side. Is there a specific rule around the man has to walk first, and if so, where is this written, and sort of why? Because I'm just trying to understand what might be the thinking behind it.
Can I say something?
Yeah, of course.
I sent it in the text. Actually, I was saying it while they were walking, but you can see I put it in the text for voice. It says the girl holding the end of the sash when they walk around. It's in the Maryadas, and as well as the basics of Sikhi video, which is good. It says why, but basically, then they're both equally distanced from the Guru Granth Sahib. That's why. Otherwise, one is closer and one is farther.
Right, and so that makes sense to me. So that's a perspective I'd not thought about before. So I think that's good to clarify. Thank you. And in terms of who's able to walk first, because I've only seen in every wedding I've been to, the man lead and the woman walk behind him. Is there a possibility to switch them around, or is there a reason the man always goes first?
No, here it says. Sorry.
There's no possibility to switch them around because the Shabda, which is read from Gurbani, the Pankti says Palle tende lagi. It doesn't say Palle tende laga. So the Palla, the one who's holding the Palla, is the woman, and she's holding the Palla, which is attached to the man. So if it said Palle tende laga, then it would be the man holding it attached to the woman, and the woman would be in front. But that's not the case. So Gurbani is our reference here. So you can't change that.
I see. Okay.
Interesting
Again,
perspective. Go ahead.
in my opinion, I don't see this really as a point of inequality, because what's really important in life, everything else, again, Gurbani says is Maya, right? The relationships that we have with each other. What really matters is your relationship with Vahiru. Whether you're a male or a woman, both can attain Vahiru equally, on equal measures, right? So for me, that doesn't seem like doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like sexism to me, because in Gurbani, Maharaj says countless times that women are, why call the woman bad manda kisa kisi ka pankti. What was the pankti again? Manda kisa
Manda kise na
jit jamma rajan. Right?
Sorry, I forgot the Pankti now. I got confused with a different one. Yeah.
I got
Sokya
confused.
Manda
That's the one. Yeah.
Jit jamma rajan, right? Generations upon generations rely on the woman, right? Maharaj does so much praise of the woman, right? We even in Dasam Granth, there's so much praise of a feminine deity, right? Chandi, so much praise, right? Beyond praise of Chandi. So I don't in Sikhi, I don't believe there's a place for sexism. Maharaj completely makes it clear. They make it clear that the woman is equal to man, right? So just because the man walks in front of a woman during the Anand Karaj, that I don't think that's sexism, because again, what really matters the most is their distance from Vaheguru.
So in regards to that, what would you guys think of? Okay, so we've talking about the man walking first and then the woman, but what if both are walking side by side? What about that?
No, that's what I was saying before. Then it's like one is farther away. They say they're equidistant.
Interesting. Does anyone have anything else to say regarding what's considered the quote-unquote correct Anand Karaj conduct? This can be anything from, chairs to the manner in which you walk, anything like that.
Oh, I had put a question in the question box.
Oh, sure. Don't worry,
Someone
we'll
can
get
answer.
to the, or fine, we can just, I guess, that's mostly, we can have that for number 5. That's under the gatekeeping one, for the Amritari only or the Sajtari
Oh,
only.
okay.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, then we'll move on to question number 3, which is what is the Sikh stance on destination Anand Karajs? So let's be clear here. Destination Anand Karajs is basically instead of holding it in a gurdwara, you go to some resort or some place outside the gurdwara, bring Maharaj there, and have it in some sort of like a public setting. Like examples would be the recent Freedom Singh video, or even Jagmeet Singh's own wedding, who he had it his own Anand Kaj, which was on the beach. So what do you guys think of a destination Anand Kaj is? Feel free to give your thoughts.
By the way, someone in the chat asked if they can speak.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure. My bad, saying. Kind of joined in a little late, but even the Ratham and other stuff, and it's very interesting talking about I think it was the Aroras and the way they do certain things around Maharaj. I want to throw it in because from my own family, my dad comes from the original lineage of Sandhus that were around Lahore, so Maharaji Singh Ji's family, Maharaja Kaputla and stuff like that. In their own ceremonies, they did not do a parkarma. It was kind of strange seeing that because my dad did a parkarma for his Anand Karaj, but his ancestors never did it, and essentially they would just take matta 4 times. And then I just wanted to speak about the destination stuff as well. I'm very against it. Even when Jagmeet Singh did it, a lot of the older guys here, my dad especially as well, even me, I saw it as just abhorrent. It's something that should not happen. There's so much things you cannot control. And a lot of videos, if you try to go through the older Sikh priest videos, you can see Maharaj's angs fluttering around, being torn by the wind. There's no control of the elements. I mean, he writes it in his contracts. If you ever get a chance, me and Brampton Grant, we're best buddies. If anyone knows him, we try to set up like a fake Anand Karaj, and we got our hands on the mutual contract. And he says that, some older traditional folk might be upset if you do it on the beach. As if someone is upset now with the Saskara Maharaj being completely ignored, that makes us older folk. It's very strange the way he tries to do it. My personal opinion, he's a fake spiritual, and he's just exploiting a market of people that don't even know about the Anand Karaj process, or they feel like they're culturally entitled to it. And then that just steps outside of the Maryada. I mean, if you go into a pub or a bar or a motel, there's obviously going to be alcohol there. There's going to be people screwing around there. There's going to be all these things you cannot control. And in essence, you made the Anand Karaj process about yourself when it's supposed to be you and Maharaj. That, in my opinion, essence of lava is literally your connection to a Kalpurk. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
I agree. So if we look at the deeper meanings of lava, the Sampradayik meanings, meaning the old pre-colonial traditional meanings of lava, that the lava is actually about your relationship with Vaheguru, your marriage with Vaheguru, right? What we call, becoming one. Your journey to becoming one with Vaheguru.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what's important. It's not important that you're getting married to someone. What's important is that both of you are giving yourself to Vaheguru.
Yeah, in essence, the bride and the groom are just brides of Vaheguru.
Yeah.
And Vaheguru is the groom.
There's a pankti that comes to mind. Just pulling it out right now. ਧਨ ਪਿਰ ਇਹ ਨਾ ਆਖੀਨ ਬਹਨ ਇਕੱਠੇ ਹੋਏ ਏਕ ਜੋਤ ਦੋਇ ਮੂਰਤੀ ਧਨ ਪਿਰ ਕਹੀਐ ਸੋਏ. Right, those only, you become the husband and wife. Here is referred to husband and wife. Even if we look at marriage, is referring to husband and wife for marriage. Even if we look at, many people say that these are colonial meanings, but even if we look at pre-colonial meanings, the Faridkot Tika, the Sampradayik Satiks, meaning commentaries of Gurbani from before the British, before colonial times, right, man and woman. They do not just merely sit together. They're actually one and the same now, on the same journey to meet Vaheguru. right? So it's all about Vaheguru. Anand Karaj is all about Vaheguru. Sikhi is all about Vaheguru. Becoming, getting closer to Vaheguru, your relationship with Vaheguru. And you
Yeah.
need, marriage is about, you and the other person helping each other to become one with Vaheguru, to reach Vaheguru.
100%. And also, because about the destination weddings, to people who do them, right? I say to you, how dare you? Yeah, how dare you take Guru Granth Sahib Ji in a Tetchi on an airplane and take him to do a wedding? How dare you? How dare you do that? That's disgusting. To anyone who does that, yeah, you're not part of the bond if you do that. And you should go and ask for Mafi if you ever do something like that. And anyone who doesn't know this, yeah, please learn this. That's totally against Maryada, and that is a huge beadabi. To take Maharaj Sarup, Akal Purkh Vaheguru Sargun Sarup of Guru Granth Sahib Ji in a Tetchi and take that. All right, that's number one. Number two, look, I understand, right? We're in the West and we're used to the brides. Oh, it's the brides. It's the a bride plans her wedding when she's 10 years old. She does the drawings in her diary and all that, and it's a special day. And no, even this is wrong, because Anand Karaj is about killing your ego and surrendering yourself. Anand Karaj, right? There's many different ceremonies, Amrit ceremony, different ceremonies. Anand Karaj is another way to surrender to the Guru. It's not about you. It's not about your day. It's about the Guru again. So we need to kind of get out of this these mindsets that we have and think about what Anand Karaj really is. And the Anand Karaj should be done at a Gurdwara, because why are you saying I want to have the beach on the wedding? So you know what, Maharaj? Let's take Maharaj to come to us on the beach and let's do it where we want. No. Why should Maharaj come to you? You should go to Maharaj. Right, so this is all about ego. This is all about people's egos. That's all it is. It's nothing to do with Maryada, nothing to do with Satkar of Maharaj. It's absolutely disgusting and it should never happen.
I would also, sorry, you could go. Sorry.
I was just going to say, can I come in on that as well? So I completely agree with the destination wedding point. So there's no challenge at all there. The only question I had in my mind was around, and I was just actually slipped out of my mind now, so I do apologise. I'm going to have to be quiet, but it'll come back to me later.
I did have one point. It's not really about destination weddings, but like when my mom's grandmother had gotten married at the time, what they did was they actually brought Guru Granth Sahib Ji into their house, right? So it wasn't like at the Gurdwara, but they had brought Guruji home, and then they did the Anand Karaj at home. So based on that, some like family members have then opted for instead having the Anand Karaj at home instead of the Gurdwara. I don't know like how I feel about that, because I live in Canada and we have a lot of Gurdwaras that they can go to, but then they opted to have it at home instead, right? So like I don't know, like if it's, for me it's just confusing, I guess. So if somebody knows a little bit more about that.
So I think I can, just give an input. I don't know the exact answer, just what I've heard from older Gursikhs. So bringing Maharaj home for Anand Karaj, it kind of went on a trend back in the 80s and 90s, because many Khadku Singhs, they would want to get married, and the police would know if they were at the Gurdwara, so they would secretly bring Maharaj to their home, keeping respect of Maharaj, and they would do Anand Karaj there secretly at night. It'd always be at night in around 12 to 4, so that the police couldn't find them while they're doing Anand Karaj. You can even search up YouTube videos of Khadku Anand Karajes. So that's just my understanding. Maybe perhaps it's wrong. Hopefully someone can bring something else.
Yeah, no, that is
Wait,
correct.
which word did you say? I didn't know what that word means. With the K. Sorry.
Khadku.
What does that mean?
Like those
The freedom fighters.
Freedom fighters. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so no, that is true what Karaj Singh has said. Because in certain contexts it's allowed, right, at your house, but to say that I want to go to a beach and you're taking the mick here, right? So yeah, it is allowed, and it depends on the circumstances. I've seen them happen as well in certain circumstances where it cannot be done at the Goddaros, etc. But obviously that's totally different to going to, you know, an exotic location and just, yeah.
All right. Does anyone have any other views? Oh, Pritpal Singh, you wanted to speak? Feel free to come give your views.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot the other point. I was just going to raise it now. I was on a webinar earlier on today where a similar conversation was taking place. And some of the quotes that you've given around the masculine and the feminine in relation to marriage were brought up at that webinar too. And the way that they presented the interpretation of Gurbani that you're quoting on this session was that it's the gender isn't male and female as described by some people. So I just wanted to put that out there. I'm not an expert. My Punjabi is terrible, but I just wanted to raise that point that there are alternative viewpoints from mainstream Sikhs who when they are telling us around the same sort of points around masculine and feminine words within the marriage context. They're gender neutral.
So, because I was the one that said that Pankti, I'll answer this. And I also, since we're on the topic of respect of Gurbani, respect of Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj, I also add some few points as to why, because you know there's so many people who may not know why, and I'll add on to that. So I'm not coming from myself. This is not coming from my interpretations. It's coming from the Farid Kortika. You can search that up. There's a very, very famous Nirmala Satik, Sampradayak Satik. Satik means commentary of Gurbani. It explains Gurbani. It not just gives the translation, but explains the history behind each shabd. So again, this, you know, you can look at it that way. The relationship between the Atma and Paramatma, the relationship between the soul and Vaheguru, because we see in many, many places in Gurbani where Maharaj refers to the soul as the woman and God as the man, and them becoming one as the marriage, right? Maharaj uses that metaphor, but here is quite clear. It is quite clear that Maharaj is referring to marriage between they're referring to family life here. So again, this is not coming from me. This is coming from what we call Sampradayak thinking. Sampradayak thinking is, you can think of it as pre-colonial Sikhi. So traditional Sikhi. So
Traditional, yeah.
Yeah, so let me just move on to the respect of Gurbani. Why do we
Just say one point just to add to that what you said, about that shabd. So obviously when you look at Gurbani, yeah, as Upkar Singh knows, you look at it through different perspectives, like the historical context, based on the actual letters of what the words mean, that aspect, then the spiritual aspect, then the metaphorical, then the physical, right? And in all of them, in all of those aspects, there's still no example that goes against it being a man and a woman. So in the spiritual side, in the spiritual aspect, of course, it's not about man and women. It's about two souls, right? And the soul is gentlest. That's absolutely correct. That's the spiritual aspect. But remember, we're not just, we're not like, we don't identify as non-dual and all that. That's a point which you reach with Guru Prasad, with Guru's Kirpa, and through doing bhakti, right? That's something you reach there. Until then, you have your duty, because remember, Guru has ordered us to live in live a Gristi Jeevan, right? So you have to live in the world, and you have to do your moral duty, which is, as a man and woman, to get married and produce kids, right? That's one of the duties. So yeah, go ahead, Upkar Singh, what are you going to carry on?
So again, if we look at many cities, let me just go back. Professor Sahib Singh, अर्थ जो सिर्फ शरीक तौर on the body level, right, on the physical level, रल के they're husband and wife, man and woman, right? Again, the soul is genderless. The soul has no label. The soul doesn't have a name. The soul is just nirgun and formless again, right? But on the body level, marriage is Maharaj refers to marriage as between man and woman. So in Faridkot Tika प्रसंग में स्त्री पर कह नहीं कहते जो इकट्ठे हो बैठते. You see, it is referring to Istri and man, right? Bhai Manmohan Singh ji ka Shromani Committee, right? I think this SVC, Sant Kripal Singh ji Sampradaya Satik, again Istri, Te Pati, right? So we can see that this is common in many schools of thought, that this tuk refers to man and woman, right? So let's just move on to Gurbani. The other, since we're on the topic of the beach, the destination weddings, so we need to respect Gurbani as much as we can, even if we think that respect perhaps is illogical or unnecessary. But again, that prema bhakti, that love that you show towards Vahiru, is always appreciated. So because Sabad Guru Surton Chella, right? That sabd that came out of the Guru's mouth, you, by putting your consciousness upon it, you become one. Gurbani is jag meh chanan karm vasan man aaye. Gurbani is here to save the world. Gurbani is here to bring light to this world. Turki bani aayi, tin sagli chint mutaye. Bani Guru hai bani, vich bani amrit sare. ठीक है जी. बाणी बरलो विचार सी जेको गुरमुख होए. बाणी मंत्र महापुरखन की मन है उतारन मान को. पोथी परमेश्वर का थान. This pothi means scripture, a text. This pothi is the form of Vaheguru. This Gurbani is the Guru. This Gurbani. So we should show as much respect as we can. We should treat the Sargon Sroop as best as we can. And with our limited minds, we treat Vaheguru as a king. With our limited minds. ठीक है जी. So that's all I want to add. If you don't know how to respect Guru Granth Sahib Ji, if you don't know the Maryada, the code of conduct to respect Maharaj, or to take Maharaj from one place to another to escort Maharaj, then please ask someone. Please ask a learned Gursikh. Please ask your Granthi Singh at the Gurdwara. Please ask. There's nothing wrong with asking. Please do not, take Maharaj in a taxi. Do not take Maharaj in a box. Do not take, there's been cases like that. Do not take Maharaj, there's ways, if you want to take Maharaj across, in a plane, there's ways we can do that. You just got to contact Singhs and perhaps you can find a way. So, that is, one way that what has been done is that the whole plane has been bought out and the whole plane has been made into, you could say a darbar for Maharaj Sarup. Right, so that's how they did it back in the early 2000s. So that's just what I want to add. Please respect Gurbani as much as you can. This Gurbani is Sargun Sarup. This Bani is the form of Vaheguru, here to connect us with the Nirgun Sarup, the formless Vaheguru.
Gursevik Singh posted a video as well in text for voice, and you can see there that Dr. Freedom Singh, he's sitting there with Maharaj, and you can see that Maharaj's angs. Right, this is our father, Guru Granth Sahib Ji. Maharaj's angs. You can see the air, the wind there blowing the angs everywhere. Look at this major beadabi. Yeah, how people like him will say to him, "How dare you?" And he should be out of the pant for doing this thing. He should be going to every Gursikh and ask for maafi for doing a disgusting thing like that.
All right, since we're already on the topic of Freedom Singh, let's just move on there. So the next question is, what do you guys think of Freedom Singh's wedding offerings and his recent scandal? So just for some context, check text for voice and it'll be the post there. So recently there was a video posted of a destination wedding done by Freedom Singh, who is known to have quote-unquote unorthodox Sikh weddings for hire, and he does destination weddings as well as same-sex Anand Karajas, along with many other modifications. So this video in particular sparked outrage for a lot of reasons. First one being it was a destination wedding. Then because there was people who were not elderly or disabled sitting on tables and chairs. Then it was that it was actually like outside, like with the air and stuff. Then another thing that people were uncomfortable about was that the couple was not respecting the maryada of the Nandkar's lava, so they were walking instead of one in front of the other, it was side by side. And then obviously the elephant in the room, let's just address it. The major thing that people were you could say triggered about was that the fact that it was a same-sex Anand Karaj. So with that being said, what do you guys think of Freedom Singh's Anand Karaj offerings? I mean, of course, we already know, Gagan, what your view is. Anyone else? Would you guys like to give your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure why he's just done blatant not following the Maryada, and like if you want to get that change, then you can try to get that change while it's there. I don't understand why people are putting themselves above it.
So, as Gursevic already pointed out, Freedom Singh it seems, right? We never know what's on someone's mind, right? But it seems, there's a lot of evidence pointing towards it that Freedom Singh is just doing this for the money that's involved with these big, lavish weddings that he does. So I feel like, again, he's showing that, he saw an opening, a vacuum of to begin this industry because people wanted to make their weddings look nice. People wanted to have same-sex marriages. So he saw an opening and took that opportunity to make some cash.
Um, it sounds like it's going to be a bit of a controversial point, but from my perspective, it's also a big brave step for him to have taken so publicly to be able to host is the wrong word, to have such a same-sex wedding, because it's offering a lifeline that any other gurdwara, so that same-sex couple, would never have found a way to get married in a gurdwara, and this was the only way they could do it. So from their perspective, he was really a lifeline for them to get married in the eyes of the guru, from my perspective, it feels like it's a great service that he's doing. It does sound like there were some points that could have been taken into account in terms of the seating, and the other opposition around destination weddings. But in essence, if you don't have any other alternative, then this is the alternative that is being offered, is the only option, and he's offering that.
Shraddha, you're a doctor, yeah, so I'm sure you're more than smart enough to know that Dr. Freedom Singh, he's seen this, right? He's seen the gap in the market essentially, and he's exploiting it. He's using it for his monetary gain. Now, people who sell Sikhi, they're known as Masans. Okay, and they were punished very harshly by the Guru at the time, and that's what he's doing. So, firstly, he's doing interfaith marriages, which doesn't make sense. There's no such thing as an interfaith and Anand. That's literally an oxymoron. It can't happen. You can't say you accept the Guru at the same time say I accept someone else as well. That doesn't make sense. And he does them, and he knows that the Godras don't allow them. Some do, but they get shut down quickly. So most Godras do not allow interfaith marriages, and so he saw that as a gap in the market and thought, you know what, I'm going to do this. And he charges quite a lot as well. We did an experiment where we see how much he charges, and was it $2,000, $3,000?
Yeah,
I can't
no,
remember.
it was even more. So basically, I went to his website and I pretended to get married to some like random Gori Catholic person and stuff. And it turned out just the starting bill was over $3,700 USD. So just this is before even anything. It's just 3,700 just for basically like an Anand cottage for them flying out there and stuff. And then I didn't get back to them because like they weren't responding due to the recent controversy and stuff. But I'm sure it would be eventually even more because that's what they emailed us saying back 3,700 just starting price. So yeah, it's very expensive.
Exactly. So he's making a lot of money. It's very evident to see, and he's making it at the expense of going against Maryada. All right, and he's literally selling a service. He's selling Sikhi. And I don't know how there's people out there who still can't see what he's doing. It's literally evident to see.
Say something, please.
Sure. Wait, actually no. Wait. Next we have Mushumi, and then we have
Yep.
Kabir, and then yeah. Go ahead. Oh, sorry
That's
about
me.
that.
Thanks.
Go ahead. Sorry.
That's okay. Look, I have to say I agree with Shraddha. It's the Sikh community. They're a tremendous areas that still need a little bit of work on in terms of acceptance. And for LGBT couples, there is no way someone could have even dreamt of getting married in front of Babaji, let alone in a gurdwara. I agree that Babaji shouldn't be taken out in a disrespectful manner in a place where, you know, it's unhygienic, you can't look after Babaji. But let's say, rather than being on a beach, they had taken Babaji to a hall. There was no alcohol served, and everything was done according to the proper procedure. That's, in my mind, that's really no different to someone bringing Babaji home in a very respectful manner, keeping it clean, doing it properly. Because, you know, we've had many people have akhand parts at home. They do bring Babaji home, and it's done properly, respectfully, lovingly, and then you bring Babaji back to the Gurdwara as soon as the part is over, as soon as the Anand Karaj is over. As for LGBT couples getting married, in the lava itself, it says there's gender neutrality. So, I mean, I don't know much about Freedom Singh. I was just reading his story. Yes, absolutely. There might be an aspect of him wanting to monetize this and make money out of it. But it sounds as though this is a man who grew up in quite a strict environment, is quite attached to his religion, but wanted to marry someone who wasn't Sikh. And it's possible that the community and his family didn't agree, and we don't know what actually happened. And maybe this was born from there, where he saw an opportunity to provide something to people who want to marry someone outside of the Sikh faith and give them an avenue for that.
Thank you for your thoughts. Would anyone like to respond until we move on to Kabir? All right, go ahead, Kabir Singh.
Oh yeah, so like the past 2 points are saying, he gave an avenue for like people like not two Sikhs or not man and woman, but I think they could have still gotten married in the Gurdwara, but not to the Anand Karaj. They could have had a part in Ardas. I think that is available for them as well.
It's not
I
really
think,
counted as a
people-
wedding, though, is it? Sorry, I'm interrupting, but that
No,
wouldn't be
it's fine.
counted
It's
in
fine.
anyone's mind as a wedding, though.
But I mean, like, if they were like super interested, this is just like what I'm thinking. I could be completely wrong. I have no clue. This is just what the thought that's coming to my mind. If they were super inclined to have the Anand Karaj and were very attached to the religion, then they would like wait or do something else. Because right now the Maryada doesn't allow for it, so I don't know why they would go against it.
And
Know what I'm
just a
saying?
response to Dr. G, actually, yes, having an Anand Part and Ardas and Kirtan and Langar and stuff is considered a wedding. For example, a lot of Sajdari couples or a lot of even interfaith Sikh couples, historically, instead of doing an Anand Karaj, they would just do Anand Part, and they would get married that way. Even when Sikhs would marry Hindus and stuff, instead of having an Anand Karaj or the Havan, which was customary, which is now only practiced by the Namtari community who preserved it. But yeah, so they actually would do Anand Sahib Part, and the Anand Karaj was not exclusively seen as the only form of Sikh marriage. All right, so next up we have Upkar Singh and then Gursevik.
So, some of my points will actually lead into the other question, but if I don't have permission, I won't speak on that yet. But I really wanted to reply to again about the Ananda Karaj. So, if we look at Bhai Desa Singh Ji, Ratname, Bhai Chopa Singh Ji, Bhai Daya Singh Ji, these Puratan Ratname. So, Ratname means the code of conduct of the Khalsa. Khalsa, right? So Khalsa is that brotherhood, that sisterhood, that group of Sikhs that have given their life to to Guru Gobind Singh Ji and have taken Amrit. They've gone to do the Amrit Sanchar. So there's 5 there's five different there's five ceremonies in the life of a Khalsa. So one is birth, the second is Amrit, and the third is Vidya, right? So the fourth is Anand, and then the Anand Karaj. The fifth is death. So Anand Karaj really, if we could see it from a certain perspective, because Anand Karaj is usually meant to refer to an Amritari, a Khalsa marriage, right? And that kind of has changed with this new Maryada that has come in the 20th century, to include everyone, to make sure that they didn't feel excluded from the Pantha. So that is my understanding of what the Anand Karaj is. And again, so the interfaith Anand Karaj, again, those points have been made so many times that Anand Karaj is giving your life to the Guru, and you wouldn't want a Muslim doing that. You wouldn't want a Christian doing that when they already believe in Jesus, or they swear on the Prophet, right? So that's just my thinking of what the Anand Karaj is. Same thing goes with same-sex marriage, right? So same-sex, usually they're not Amritari, and I'm a firm believer that Anand Karaj is only reserved for Amritaris.
Yeah, I have a question if I can ask, just to follow up.
Okay. Go ahead. Keep it brief, because we go to
Okay.
Save Xing afterwards. Go ahead.
Since the current Mirada allows for non-Amritdaris to do it as well, do you think that should be avoided until it's changed, or no, Gurdwara should still allow it?
Wait, pardon? I didn't hear that.
Like the current Mirada, doesn't it allows, as you just said, it allows for non-Amritdaris to take part in Anand Karaj as well. So do you think Gurdwara should avoid it, or until the Mirada is changed, they should allow it?
This is a very, you can look at this question in a couple of different ways. But due to the Panth, so a large amount of Sikhs have decided on this, so I have to respect that decision. Even if my thinking is different, I have to accept that decision and not judge anyone against that. Right. So that's my answer.
All right, Prithpal Singh. Feel free to make your comment.
Yeah, my question is really, I think, is it a failure of our own dharam that we are in this position? Because surely we should be providing some sort of path for anybody who wants to have an Anand Karaj, so that they understand before the day of the Anand Karaj actually what they're committing to. The number of weddings I have been to, and if we just go back to traditional heterosexual weddings of Punjabi Sikh children, most of them do not have a clue what they're doing. They have to be instructed on the day how to sit, how to matha tek, how to do all these very basic things that all of us that claim to be Sikhs should know. I've had two non-Sikh friends of mine who have married their Sikh partners and are in very successful relationships for many years, marriages for many years. They have both undertaken intensive understanding of what an Anand Karaj would involve, what Guruji means to them in their relationship. They've taken, whereas the number of Punjabi Sikh people I've seen that go in with so much disrespect for Guruji, not understanding even the basics of how to matha tek, I really feel as though we as a Bantha ought to be deciding that there needs to be a route that all couples should have to undertake. And just to add to that point around heterosexual marriages as well, I've heard a few times people have talked about family life. There are heterosexual couples who are unable to have children. Does that mean that they cannot have an Anand Karaj? There are also many avenues for same-sex couples now to have children, and they have very successful families. But even if a heterosexual or a same-sex couple were to have decide not to have children, which is quite commonplace these days too, does that exclude them from having an undercarriage? There's lots of questions here, but the problem is that we need to go through a process whereby people understand what they are engaging in, not just the day, but actually what does an undercarriage mean for the rest of your life, and what does that relationship with Guruji mean for you? So I've brought up quite a few questions, so I don't know if anybody wants to answer any of those.
I mean, if it
Go
kind of
ahead,
ties
Gurusevic.
into what I wanted to talk about as well. I mean, Mashumi was mentioning that maybe because Dr. Freedom wanted to marry Leela, his partner right now, that he did all this. And honestly, like from my own family, from my dad's side, which has a lot of different Muslims and Hindus, from my mom's side, which has a lot of Hindus and Christians. Traditionally, both sides of my family, what they've done is essentially they would carry on their local or cultural ethnic traditions at home. But at the end of it, once they initiated their own ceremonies, they would go to their local gurdwara, have an ardas done, do peta, do seva, contribute to the langar, or give something else, give their time to the guru, and then that would be their blessing. And it kind of carried on because from my dad's side of the family, I have relatives from East Punjab all the way out to Libya, and they've still carried this on. I've talked to quite a few Afghan Sikhs that our family has sponsored since the attack by ISIS-K, and they carry on these same traditions too. They don't merge themselves they don't merge themselves saying that I'm entitled to the Anand Karaj. Even if they are Amritari and their partner isn't, they don't go for the Anand Karaj. They rather wait before they rather wait until the partner takes Amrit and then they go for the Anand Karaj. Like for my own example as well, my partner, she's an Iranian, and she's currently introduced herself and immersed herself in Sikhi. And we've discussed this. I've discussed this with my family. Her family came to an understanding as well. I would not go for an Anand Karaj. And I completely, wholeheartedly accept that. Because the Anand Karaj isn't about me or her. It's about Guru Sahib. It's about Maharaj Akalpurk. So I would not disrespect it. We would carry on with our local traditions and her ethnic traditions. And then what we're going to do is exactly that. Go to the Gurdwara, have an ardas done, do some seva, contribute to the langar, donate to charity, give her the swand from that wedding day, from the shagan. So that's kind of where I see it from as well. But there's one point on his blog, I linked Dr. Freedom's blog, his destination wedding blog website, and he talks about the 1945 Rat Maryada decision. And personal vichar, the way, like from what I understood about the Sampradiyas, the history that I've read from different perspectives, from the Sampradis, from Maranji Singh Ji's time, the Missile period, from all these different sources, and then outsider sources, British people, there's some, Frenchmen as well that have discussed how these units work. And essentially, Sampradis were Jarvan, Nikwan, Nikrao. But then by the time we got to the 1945 Ratan Mayada, I see that parallel spectrum that we had, because Sikhi in my eyes is not a top-down hierarchy. It's a horizontal spectrum. And no one was stepping over each other during that time. But 1945, the definition of Sikh and Khalsa was just slapped together. And a lot of communities, Sajtari communities, were pretty much kicked out of the Panth. Nirmale Udasis were talked down to by the Singh Sabiyas. And I saw this with the Nanak Panthi community, Nanak Shahi community. Whenever you look at the history, they were excluded. And what ended up happening is that everyone just cut out who did not fit this new definition. And I think a lot of our problems are coming from that. There's a lot of different groups out there that can trace themselves to Guru Nanak Dev Ji, to Guru Amar Das Ji, right? And they have, some of them even have direct lineages to the Guru's family or Seviks of the Guru. But in current definitions, they don't fit. So we exclude them. And it's created this weird sense of that Amritari is the final step when, as Singh was saying, it's just the third step in life. And then it's Anand Karaj and then Mukti, death. So that's where I'm approaching it. Even with my own personal life, I'm going to be practicing it to the point that I don't disrespect Guru. And if my partner decides to take Amrit, it's her choice. I'm not going to force her to convert or any of that other crap. If she chooses to take it, then we'll get an Anand Karaj. Whether that's 10 years from now, 50 years from now, maybe she decides to take Amrit the next day. And those are my vichars.
I want to respond to a point as well by Prithpal Singh. I think he made a very good point where he was saying that there needs to be something in place for when there's someone who's not from a Sikh background and they want to come in and get married and have Anand Karaj. If you look at most other religions, especially Christianity, 6 months before, you have to do a course to actually learn what Christianity is about, what Jesus represents, what the wedding means, etc., etc. You have to actually do a course and learn, like 1 day a week for 6 months or whatever, right? And so that means you're prepared and you fully know what you're getting into before you do the ceremony. And I think something has started as well in the UK. It did start because there was a lot of controversy about the interfaith weddings that were taking place, and so there has been a procedure that has started now where people who are coming into Sikhi and want to do an Anand Karaj, they have to first learn what the Anand Karaj is, learn what Sikhi is, because you are becoming a Sikh, and that does mean you have to reject. If you're a Hindu, you got to reject all the Devta, you got to reject the Sanatan Mat. If you're a Muslim, you got to reject Prophet Muhammad and his Sunnah's teachings. If you're Christian, you got to reject Jesus, etc., etc. You have to reject all that if you're gonna have the Anand Karaj, because when you're going around Maharaj, that represents you have given everything. Maharaj is the center of your life, and when you Mata take, you give your head to Maharaj. That's what it represents. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. But then don't lie and say that, you know what, I'm going to do the ceremony even though I don't believe in it. And you might say, well, there's people who are Sikhs and they do it, but they don't believe in it, and that's a good point. But that's a separate topic. They're two different topics. So yeah, I'm just because the destination weddings are also interfaith as well. And like I said, he is Dr. Freedom Singh. He is capitalizing on this for monetary gain, and that's what the Masands did, and many people know how the Masands were dealt with previously.
Thank you, and that's a really good segue into our final question before we go into the Q&A section, which is let's talk about Anand Karaj gatekeeping. So, who can and cannot have an Anand Karaj? What do you guys think?
So before I make any of my points, I want to make it clear that my understanding is that same-sex attraction is, perhaps biologically related. There are still studies going on. There are still studies going on. Perhaps someone else can elaborate on that. I don't know too much, but it is said that there's some genetic, some hormonal changes in birth that may cause this. So I do want to say that I do believe it's natural. That I'm not here to judge if anyone has that preference towards their sexuality. But I want to make it clear that I do think, from what I've been told by my elders, from my teachers, is that it is between man and woman. It is to have a child. It is to raise the next generation, and we must have, boundaries to what Anand Karaj means. And again, if someone has a attraction to the same gender and that they want to make Sikhi the center of their lives for both of them, that couple wants to make Sikhi the center of their lives, they can go a different route. That's always accepted. And keep in mind that marriage is not always is not the path that everyone has to take. Marriage is not the path that everyone has to take. The Guru accepts this as well. Many good Sikhs, they go along the path of remaining celibate and doing seva and doing prachar for the rest of their lives. So there is that avenue.
And the technical term for that is, I believe, Bahangam, correct?
Yeah, Bahangam Jati Bahangam.
So examples of famous Bahangams in Sikh history would be Baba Deep Singh, who did. So Bahangams basically they forsake the grist jivan, the householder life, in favor for doing full seva mantandan of like Sikh istan, Sikh institutions. So people like Mai Pago or Baba Deep Singh. So like that.
Present day, we would think about Sant Mohan Singh Ji Pindranwale, who live at Pindran. Right now, we would think you could say Bhagat Ji, Bhagat Jaswant Singh Ji, who live in Brampton right now. There's many Gursikhs, Gyani Bhagwan Singh Ji Pindranwale, many Gursikhs outside. I only know the Taksali ones, but outside of many jathas, many institutions, many sampradayas, you can find that Udasis still do carry out the Bahangam traditions mostly. Same with many Nirmale. So you can see this throughout the Panth that remaining, not marrying, is allowed, but it has its certain protocols, a certain way to live alone. It's to give your life to the Guru, either through giving your life, physically, or living seva, living gurbani, doing prachar, and there's what I've been told about the Bahangam lifestyle is very hard and very demanding regarding your thoughts with opposite gender or whatever you're attracted to. So in the Taksal, what I know of is I don't even know if I should say this because this is kind of like you tell someone on the side this,
Just say this is an open discussion. We're all mature here.
So if someone does have that tendency to be attracted to the other gender, what they're told is to either marry and focus on Vaheguru, marry a woman and focus on Vaheguru, because your journey is for Vaheguru, right? That's why you're Gobind Milan ki eh teri bariya, or to remain Bahangam. And again, now you have complete focus on Vaheguru. Now you don't have children and a wife in a way. So now your focus is Vaheguru. And regarding the LGBTQ, the same laws of Kaam, the same laws of lust apply, right? We're humans. We're both one and the same. Manas ki jasab ek pehchan bo, right? We're one and the same humans, right? There's no difference. We have the same ears, the same eyes, the same laws regarding the panch vikars, the five thieves, right? Lust, especially lust. Again, many people want to make it clear that it's not just sexual, but it is physical, and sexuality does come within that sexual desire. That applies to everyone who wants to walk on this path. The laws of lust apply to everyone. Hey kamang narak bisramang. Calm, following your desires, your sexual desires outside of marriage, outside the point of raising children, can and does lead to, as they would say, hell. It does lead to, even if that person is hetero, if that person is homosexual, if that person is anything, right? Calm is not the way to go for a Sikh. The way to go for a Sikh is to completely fall in love with Vaheguru, to be in love with the Guru. So that's just what I have to say regarding that.
Can I just make a clarification as well? LGBT people do not have a preference. They are born that way. Just as a straight person doesn't have a preference and is born in that way. So I just wanted to clarify, it's not a preference that somebody wakes up and says, I'm going to do this. This is the way Vaheguru has created them.
Yeah, I did make that clear. I do believe that it is biological. I'm sorry if my words didn't carry that out through what I said. But as someone who doesn't marry, someone who chooses to live a celibate life and is heterosexual, or is even living a married life, they can't keep looking at every other woman. They can't follow their thoughts like that. So I believe that applies to everyone.
And just one other point as well around trying to get somebody who is non-straight in their sexual orientation married forcibly into a heterosexual relationship is abuse of both the partners and completely unacceptable.
Again, I just shared what I've been told.
Okay, but it is a violation of our human rights. We need to be really clear about this, because actually, this is because if you were to go down this road and use this sort of terminology, you end up down a very dangerous road where potentially you're going to have consequences for the people that are subjected to such relationships, as has happened in the past. We've seen many examples across the world where people have been murdered, put into awful circumstances. You're creating mental trauma for people. And how do you think the other partner would feel if if they're lied to in any way into a relationship? But the whole point about going into a relationship is about being honest, and that sounds like you're then asking people to be deceitful.
I know. Look, Pritpal Singh, you're absolutely right, because what you see as well, it happened a few times, maybe many times, where maybe the guy, he's gay, right? But he's obviously, he doesn't tell his parents, so he's brought up, his parents think he's straight. Then they, forcefully get him married. He doesn't want to get married to a woman, but they get him married to a woman. And then after, when the woman wants to get, physical, intimate, whatever, the man's not. He doesn't want to, and then it causes divorces. It causes depression to men. Of course, you have a valid point, 100%. And that's why I think when Karaj Singh said that if the person if he actually is into Sikhi, because we're talking about people like sadhus, right? No sadhu's going to question this, and technically that and historically they never have. No sadhu has gone to Guru and said, "How, I'm gay. Let me get married. Let me have Anand Karaj with a man." That's never happened historically either. So that's why the Bahangam route, Bahangam route, which Karaj Singh has said, is available to them, to anyone who wants to get, who is gay, right, or lesbian, right? Just like by my Pagoji devoted their life to Shri Guru Gobind Singh Ji Sache Badshah, and they didn't take the bliss to life. So there's many options available, and the thing is, what I see is people want to make it as, just because it's not available to them, they want it. Like, when something you can't have, you want it now. I'm not saying that's everyone, but I see this a lot, where just because you can't have something, you want it more. And I see that happening rather than someone who's actually a very high level Sikh and then arguing for it. I've never seen that. I've never seen a Mahaprabhu saying that, listen, I'm gay and I want to gain Anand Karaj. Show me one of Mahaprabhu saying that.
No, so I don't deny that nobody's asking for it, but the reason nobody's asking for it or talking about it, and then we end up going down these deceitful routes, is that there is no way for people within our community to be talking about these issues, which is why these sorts of events are really important, because we need to raise awareness amongst people that LGBT people are very prone to mental health issues as a result of not being able to be who they have been born as. And that really needs to be at the center of any discussions when we're talking around options. You might talk about options. Some people, the Bahangam route you're talking about might be the route that they want to take, but these are individual decisions for people to make. But the trouble is that nobody has these open conversations within our community at all. It's all hushed up. So when you're thinking about young people, when they are becoming aware of their bodies changing and perhaps the attractions that they do have, whether they're straight, this applies to straight people as well as LGBT youth, but it's harder for LGBT youth because they have no outlet within the Sikh community to go and talk to anybody about these issues and to be able to say, these are the issues that I have. Who can I talk to? What can I do? Where would they go?
And if I can add on to that, just responding to a few different things that were said, I think I'm getting the sense that quite often we don't see somebody coming out who's quite
who's scholarly, who has a lot of knowledge of Sikhi, but also is asking for a same-sex partnership. But probably because of what Upkar Singh was saying at the beginning, that really in common discourse that is not a path that's offered at all. So the only option from what I'm hearing right now is that the only way to be non-heterosexual is to live a celibate life. That's really, unless I'm misunderstanding this, I'm as a gay person, I'm not allowed within my Sikhi to practice as a Sikh person in a partnership, so I'm not allowed to access Anand Karaj because that's considered lustful, because I can't have a child with my partner, but I can have a family life. As Pritpal said earlier, I have very many options to now have a family in a very committed, loving relationship with my partner, who happens to be, in this case, a same-sex partner. And I think that is an option that does not violate, in my understanding, any of the principles that Sikhi gives to us. But that option doesn't seem to be offered from what Upkar Singh was saying in the beginning. And it seems like, oh, the only option available to me is to be celibate and live the, I've forgotten the Punjabi word used for it, but live the, right, that. So I think I think part of the difficulty is, as again reiterating what Prithal was saying, if we don't talk about it, if we don't offer an option and normalize that option, then we're never going to be able to find somebody who is taking up an option, because that path is not available. You haven't paved that path for them.
So, because this is due to my points, I'd like to make myself clear. I provided options. I didn't provide that you have to do this. I provided what I've been told, what's done, what has been done with those that lived in the sampradaya. Living in a sampradaya, an institution or a jatha, is completely different than living in an actual everyday working life, right? So it's very different. That's what I've been. That's the option that's been given to those that have lived in the jatha. So if you guys don't know what that life is like, you could think of it as like living like a monk, right? Normally, jatha Singhs don't really get married in the first place because all this learning, all this gurbani, they understand that they don't really want a wife. They've kind of lost that desire for like a normal life, and they really want to go to Vaheguru. So for people that have that understanding and are born homosexual, they can understand that and get past that. But for everyday living, of course, I cannot. This is not forced on anyone. This is not what you have to do. This is just what I just gave examples. I don't expect anyone, because living Bahangam is such a hard life, even for a heterosexual, even for an asexual, right? The other desires come into the mind, right? So again, so we've talked about what Ananda Karaj is. I believe we came across that point, beyond that point, and what you do with your life is up to you, ultimately. And if you do want to, marry someone of the same sex, you can, you go ahead, right? We're not stopping anyone, but you do have options that you can follow if you wish to, other than that married life. You can get married, but in a different way than the Anand Karaj. Because the Anand Karaj, we're scared of the Guru. We're scared of Vaheguru, right? Vaheguru is forever forgiving, forever calm and happy, right? But karma is not, right? Reincarnation is not that forgiving. So, we're scared of that. So we want to stay as much as we can between the lines that Vaheguru, that Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj, Guru Nanak Dev Ji Maharaj to Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj has given us. So I just want to make that clear that what you do is up to you. Who am I? Who is anyone to judge what anyone else does, right? We're not here to call each other bad. We're here to look within ourselves.
Would anyone else like to give their thoughts before we move on to the Q&A section? So just to reiterate, the current discussion point is around the idea of Anand Karaj gatekeeping of who can and cannot partake in the Anand Karaj ceremony. So this has to do with anything from LGBTQ to interfaith, the cultural Sikhs, etc.
Can I make a point?
Haji,
Oh,
of
sorry.
course.
Shraddha, you go ahead.
Okay.
All right. I was attending a webinar, and I think a few people have mentioned it in the chat as well, by the Sikh Research Institute. And a very important, strong theme that was coming out from their discussion was around reinterpreting the code of conduct and how to who is the gatekeeper in the context of this conversation, and who has the authority and what is that authority, and from that discussion, and I'd invite everybody to read the report that they offer on this. It sounded to me like there is a lot of there are very few principles that in Sikhi are very binding, and everything else is based on those basic principles, rather than being prescriptive things to do, and this is exactly how things should be lived and done. And as long as those principles are being followed and kept in mind, it sounded to me that they were suggesting that it is definitely possible, most certainly possible, to reinterpret our current code of conduct in not just in Anand Karaj, but also beyond that, how to live Sikhi in a way that is more relevant to our current 20th century, 2020 times. So I just invite everybody, because it sounds like a lot of the views being offered here are in contrast to that view being offered almost 6 hours ago, just on today. So it just raises interesting points about how different people are viewing Sikhi very differently.
Actually, I was a part of that. I listened to that, the Sikh Research Institute, their webinar. And they did say something about that. They said something about how if the Rehat Maryada is to stay timeless, like how we, all agree that it is, then the interpretation must change with the times as well. And then also they did make a point to say that, I just wanted to also add really quick, that queer couples or, couples don't have more lust than straight couples. So that point really shouldn't hold any kind of water, especially, now that we can't, or now that there's always been adoption, but now that we can there's so many other methods of having children as well. Yeah, and I think it's important to now look for realistic ways to incorporate Sikhi and queer into Sikhi, because it's not really realistic to go and live kind of a monk life, right, for anybody. And I know that you said that was just an example, but I'm pretty sure that there is, I'm pretty sure I've always been told that Guru Nanak Dev Ji actually kind of disapproves of that. Like, he disapproves of living a life where you are alone, and there's more support of a family-centered life. That's all.
The life of Bahangam. So obviously, Gares Jivan, the life of a householder, is recommended. It's not recommended to go out in the jungles and meditate all day, because you're not spreading the truth to anyone else. You're keeping it for yourself, right? So it's a reason for your ego. So in that aspect, of course, Guru Nanak Dev Ji was against that. But just like the Udasis, right, by Guru Nanak Dev Ji's son, started by them, it's accepted by the Panth. Guru Arjan Dev Ji accepted them. So they are accepted by the Gurus, the Bahangam lifestyles, and it still is practical today. Obviously, one aspect is going to a dera. There's people who are from the UK, USA, who have gone and lived in a dera for 5-6 years or for their life and dedicated themselves. So of course it's practical. It's if someone's willing to do it. It's if someone's Sikhi is at that level. Like I said before, it's about the people who are at that level, who really want to make a commitment. Also, I think Shraddha Kaur Benji, you really raised a good point as well. You said, who has the authority to say that to bring in, same-sex Anand Karajas. Who can do this? Well, the authority will come from Sri Akal Takht Sahib. That's where the authority will come from. Now, already, currently, since 2006, same-sex marriages are banned in Sikhi from Akal Takht Sahib since 2006. If you want to take this and make it a Panthik matter and have a resolution formally, then you are more than welcome to go to Akal Takht, sit with the Jathedar, sit with the people. They're all scholars there. They're doctors. They're scholars. They're all literally at a very high academic level. You can go there. You can sit with them. You can talk with them, and then there can be a resolution passed or not, etc. That's the process in Sikhi from the Akal Takht Sahib. So that would be the accepted process. Other than that, you can't just, someone says, "Oh, I want to do this," and then you have Dr. Freedom Singh capitalizing, making money. That's not the way to do it.
Can I just sort of butt in there very quickly? Is that all
Yeah,
right? Can I
sure.
speak?
Kulbir Singh, and then we'll have Prithpal Singh afterwards.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Singh.
So yeah, so I just wanted to pick up some of the bits that Shraddha and Pritpal was saying about, and also the other lady. I didn't catch the lady's name. Just about this thing about, so what the gentleman there mentions about going to the Akal Takht. But if you look at the sort of people that make up the Akal Takht, so they're men. These guys belong to like a Jat community. So these guys aren't naturally going to give up any of their power to bring in voices that aren't like theirs. So what you're going to have is, oops, sorry, can you still hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can.
Sorry,
Loud and
sorry.
clear.
So I was just going to say, so just on that point, so I'm not sure that the people in the Akal Takht, they're not necessarily progressive. And just to sort of suggest to somebody that, you need to go to the Akal Takht to have a word with them to try and get it resolved, that's not really an issue, because there's a wider politics, isn't there? And the politics of that is that maybe the people that are in the Akal Takht aren't, they're probably, in fact, they are dominated by a political party, aren't they? So they're not entirely free acting Sikhs. So they're dominated by, like a Jat male mentality, but also the whim of politics as well. So, I was on the call as well this afternoon, and it just made me reminded that we all need to look maybe inwards as Sikhs. So to sort of see, not necessarily come to answers which are prescriptive about, we need to, this is what Red says. And just on the Red, by the way, so the Red Maryada is written, that's not the word of God. That's not the Guru's word. That was written afterwards. So even to sort of say we need to follow Red Maryada, for me, it just seems that it's just a very easy answer. But where is the line in here that says, as Sikhs, we need to look inside ourselves and so come to our own sort of wise conclusions, which are a little bit more about the world that we live in, and not just based on, I wouldn't say doctrine, but based on sort of fake. I'm not even sure fake's the right word, but based on prescriptions which aren't necessarily accurate. Maybe that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, I'll just
Can I
respond
say
to you.
something?
Yeah, go ahead, Kabir. Yeah, go on.
Oh yeah, so
Wait,
you're saying
actually,
like
quickly, Prithpal Singh was supposed to go next, and then Kabir, you can go. Go ahead, Prithpal Singh.
Thank you. I'd like to make a point just around. Baji just said that it's possible to go and approach the Akal Takht and speak to them, but you're knocking on closed doors. These are people who will not engage. There is an architectural historian in India, very well respected around the world, Dr. Rai, who has been trying to talk to the Akal Takht and the SGPC in terms of trying to get World Heritage status for the Harmandir Sahib. All of her communications for many years are falling on deaf ears. If she cannot even do something which is about preserving and protecting and giving an international protective status to a place that Punjab Basha created for our Dharam and our Qawm, how on earth are we going to be able to talk about these types of issues, which we can't even talk about within our families and within our wider community?
I'll quickly answer them then, and then Kabir can make some more points here. So I'll just quickly answer them. Look, firstly, Kabir, yeah, my brother. Look, I'm sorry, but a lot of what you said is very whitewashy, very hippie, very neo, right? What you said, it's not based on Good Barney. Now, I'm sure there's people here who are academics, there's doctors here. Anything you say has to be backed with a reference. Firstly, Rahat Namme, because the Khalsa Panth is also the Guru. Rahat Namme are something which I decided as everyone should follow. Firstly, and traditional Rahat Namme like by Daya Singh Ji, which is some of it is written by most of it is said by Guru Gobind Singh Ji. By Daya Singh is just describing it. So these are Rahat Namme which we should follow. Yeah, but also you mentioned a word. You said that. Akal Takht, the Jathadars and the people there, they're not very progressive. Now, I don't really understand this word, seriously, because progressive, if we look at Gurbani, the more we're progressing into the future, we're actually going backwards. This is Gurbani saying it. This is not me. This is the Guru saying it, right? The more we're going forward into time, the more Kaljug is getting even more stronger, right? It's getting more Javan. And we're seeing that actually we're going, quote unquote, backwards. We're not progressing. Right, so this progressive term, I don't agree with it at all. The Akal Takht, people did approach the Akal Takht in 2006. There were academics who sat down and using the Gurbani Panktiyan, which some Singhs and me have shared today, and more, and history, based on that, the decision was made in 2006 that same-sex marriages are not allowed in Sikhi and they're against Maryada. So that was with the system. And if you want to go, you can go. If you're going to say that, oh, it's Jud's on this, it's not possible, then you shouldn't become, then you should never vote in this country, in UK. Don't vote. Don't vote for a party. Don't believe in the election system. Don't do anything. Just sit at home and say, oh, I believe this. But that's not realistic, is it? If you want change, you have to go through the system. So the Akal Takht Sahib is the system. You have to go through it. And I would say my advice would be to the LGBT Sarbat, the organization, go to Akal Takht, sit with them, talk to them. Go to a Mahapuruk, sit with them, talk to them. And maybe you can reach some consensus with them. Maybe you can have your, have some peace of mind. All right, that will be the start to go there.
All right, thank you for your views, Gagan. Next we have Kabir
Okay,
Singh,
same, I think.
then
Yeah, thank you.
Jagbal, and then Raman after that. Go ahead, Kabir.
I just wanted to say the thing about like why are we following the Maryadas? They're not from the Guru directly, but actually the sixth Guru, if I'm not wrong, he's the one who said the Akal Takht is the supreme authority for Sikhs, and as well as like even when there's Amrit Sanchar, like there's 5 Amritdaris there, and that's Guru Gobind Singh Ji says that's the form of him. So I think like you do obey that. Like if all the Sikhs come together and come to that decision, then that's it. You have to obey, right?
All right, thank you. Go ahead, Jagpal, and then Raman. And just to reiterate, we're just wrapping up the Anand Karaj gatekeeping point, after which we're going to get to the Q&A. A lot of the Q&A questions were kind of already answered, so we'll just focus on the ones that weren't. All right, go ahead, Jagpal.
Hi. So I fear Gagan Singh might have hit a lot of the points I was going to make. I think one thing to note is that a lot of the Jathadars and the people who were involved in the creation of the Rahat Maryada, like even in 1945, they were learned scholars, not just in like academia, but they were like taught actual Sikhi. They learnt from the texts themselves. They studied Puratan texts from all the way back to the Guru's time, virtually. So the ideas that they put forth and the conclusion they reach were based off of intense study of the material we have from the Gurus and Mahapuruks of the past, all the way up to the current day. So, in that sense, I think arguing of whether Jathadar is progressive or not progressive is kind of not a great argument, because progressivism for the sake of it doesn't really mean anything. Progressivism from different perspectives can actually be going backwards for whoever is looking at it. It doesn't really mean that it's necessarily a good thing. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing, because progressivism isn't really a certain thing that's going to happen. We've seen throughout history, sometimes it goes backwards, sometimes it goes forwards, sometimes it's only a temporary thing. So I don't think using our modern sensibilities and trying to apply it to Sikhi as it has been practiced from the Guru's time itself is the best argument or the best way to look at Sikhi and how we live ourselves in a Sikh lens.
Okay, next up we have Kabir, followed by Upkar. And if anyone else would like to speak as well, tag me in the text for voice section or send me a message. Go ahead, Kabir.
I just wanted to say something about the progressive thing. I don't think like progressive doesn't mean good. Like there's good stuff and there's bad stuff in this world. Like if it's good, it's gonna be always good, and if it's bad, it's gonna be always bad. Like there's a lot of things that are accepted right now by society which are like pretty horrible things. So I wouldn't say like it should become more progressive thinking. It should like there's good stuff and there's bad stuff. It's not really a matter of progressiveness or not, I think.
All right, go ahead, Upkar Singh.
So we're speaking, especially it seems to be that we're focusing on same-sex marriages. Just because we're not disagreeing with same-sex and Karaj does not mean that we're homophobic. We want to make that clear. We understand all. We see same light within each and every one, right? So it's not that we should teach each other, teach everyone around us, our parents, our families, that this is not something that should be shunned. This is not something that should be pushed away. This is something that should be understood, and we must educate those around us about what homosexuality and what the LGBTQ community really is. So I just want to make that clear. So I also want to make it clear that because the Khalsa has its own ceremonies, regarding the Amrit Sanchar, Vidya, Anand Karaj, I want to make that clear. I do believe Anand Karaj is specifically a Khalsa ceremony, but Guru Granth Sahib Ji is for all of humanity. Sikhi is for all of humanity. There are many spectrums where you can follow Sikhi. You can come from a, Sikhi is a spectrum, right? So we got to understand that, and people do have different views, and we got to accept that as well, that different views do exist, and does not mean that our view is invalid. It just means that perhaps if there is a lot of evidence regarding someone else's view, perhaps we may have to go over our own view again and analyze it again. So all I want to say is that we're not here to push out gays from the Panth. We're not here to push them out. We're not here to push the LGBTQ community out of the Panth. We actually want to accept all, but we do have our own boundaries. We do, as I said before, the Guru is for all of humanity.
Can I just come in on that point and just say that I totally appreciate you raising that point. Personally, I wouldn't have an Anand Karaj and a same-sex one. That's my personal choice. So not all LGBT people want to have it. But when you talk about not pushing us out of the bunt, we are completely shunned. We are completely discriminated against. We face daily abuse from within the Sikh community. So actually, when you're saying that we're not pushing you out, we are very much out of the fold. There is no, people do not have the avenue to be able. You're saying, oh, it's very easy. Go along to the Akal Takht. We cannot even go into our Gurdwara and be accepted by our wider Sikh community. We are rejected by our families. Some of us are lucky that we're not, but I've got many relatives who disown me because I identify as a bisexual. So actually, when you're sort of saying, you're not pushing us out, we're not in the bunt because people won't even accept us within our own family circles because of the discrimination we face. So there's a massive challenge here. I know it's a different point completely, but it's a basis that we need to start from, which is Vaheguru has created us all. Vaheguru's jyot is in all of us. We're supposed to love one another. All of us humans are created by Guruji. Let's love one another. Let's create a society where we can live together and amicably talk about these things. But the problem is, this is not the place that we're in. There's a few of us that are here from Sarbat today. I can assure you, we are dealing with desperate people across the Sikh faith who are unable to come out because of the pressure that exists in the community. So we really, really, really need to help our LGBT Sikh community because they are struggling at the moment.
No, 100%. Like I said, that some of this causes depression in men. It's especially, obviously, men and women, but in men especially, it causes a lot of depression, and it is something which does need to be talked about more. So I'm totally with you. It's not like if we don't want gay and Karaj or lesbian and Karaj, it doesn't mean that people are against the right for people to be gay. Or of course not. I'm totally with you, Pritpal Singh. I stand with you on that point. I also want to touch on another point as well. Is that before Upkar Singh was saying that, because traditionally this is true. Traditionally, the Anand Karaj was only reserved for Amritaris, and it kind of makes sense because when you're at that level, when you take Amrit and you've already given your head and you've formally initiated, you've taken Guru Granth Sahib Ji formally as your guru, and when you do the Anand Karaj, it's similar. You're doing something which represents a very similar tradition. It's a similar thing, and it made sense because you're already at that level. You're going to commit, so it would make sense. It's only reserved for those who are Amritari, because when you're about to have the Anand Karaj a few days before, you would take Kandili Paul, you would take Amrit, so it made sense. And the thing is, obviously now that's not the case. Everyone has Anand Karaj, but that is traditionally what used to happen. It was only reserved for Amritaris who were going to make that commitment. And the Khalsa in general, it is for someone who's going to take on certain characteristics. Men and women have to take on certain characteristics, which is not for everyone. It's not for everyone to be able to go voluntarily and take that take the vow to dedicate your life. It's not for everyone. Even in there's many texts which talk about what you have to give up, what you have to surrender, and what kind of people Khalsa is not suitable for either. For example, if we look at Pant Prakash, right? So in the Pant Prakash, Shahid Par Ratan Singh Pangu, who's a very big Shaheed, very Mahan martyr Shaheed of our Pant. This is in the Pant Prakash. It's one of our renowned historical texts, and Pai Sahib says, "Kade na gandu ran chada, yeah, kade na mande khet." Yeah, and another one which says, "Kade na gandu ran chada, kade na baje bomb." So here Pai Sahib is trying to say that what kind of characteristics someone needs to be able to carry out the Kshatriya tradition, both by men and women, right? And to do that, who can do it, who can't do it, right? So we need to think that it's not all about ourselves. It is about the Guru, and it's not just about your big day, your wedding. It's much bigger than that. And it's very important that we look at Sikhi properly. We go to the proper sources to study it before we start making claims or want things. And if you do want things, then do the proper procedure. That's my advice to everybody.
Also, Gagan Singh, would you like to explain that line that you said further, like provide an English translation of it, so there's no miscommunication?
Obviously, it's from a historical text, so it's very detailed. But like I said, Bharat Singh Pangu here is trying to talk about the Khalsa and what type of personality traits are needed for the Khalsa, both for men and women. What they need to, what things, if there are, they won't be able to do certain things, and that's what the Pankti is talking about.
All right, thank you. Also, just before we move on, I'd like to give a huge shout out to Sarbath, and thank you for Pritpal Singh and everyone else for joining us. If you guys want to get in touch with them, here you go, sarbath.net. Yeah, so next we're going to move on to our Q&A section. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to add it in the question box, and there's also the... Okay, go ahead, Raman.
Sorry, I'm just saying this for Kabir because he's unable to speak right now, but he said if people had, they wouldn't have an interfaith marriage because they'd know that they're disobeying their own religion. Yeah, just saying it on his behalf. So if people took the Anand Karaj classes that, are slowly, implementing, the interfaith marriages would
themselves on their own because they essentially come to the knowledge of that they're disobeying their own religion.
All right, thank you. So we're gonna move on to the Q&A section now. So we're gonna try doing like a rapid fire session because there's a lot of these. So the first one is, what about old people who cannot sit down? Can we have chairs for them? Does anyone? I think chairs for old people is fine. Does anyone want to contest that?
I mean, there's simple design solutions. There's this Mesh Darbar here in Brampton. If anyone's ever been there, the person that created that Gurukar, he's an engineer, and what he essentially did was instead of having chairs in the Gurdwara, he created a low platform on a really, really like even slope. So if anyone had issues of sitting or doing Chaunkari Maat, they would just walk into this area and simply sit in the seating, so they weren't
So that's
higher than
basically like a
Maharaj.
bench, right? So like a bench
Yeah,
lower
yeah,
than Maharaj without the actual handle things on the side, right?
yeah. And
Yeah,
then
so basically like a
there are some
bench
with
chair
sticky
thing,
rolling.
like a low. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So there's simple
Can I
design
just
solutions.
can I just raise another
Yeah,
point though?
of course. Go ahead.
It's not just about old people. There are people that have disabilities who cannot sit on the floor as well. So although you're talking about having a bench, somebody with a disability potentially may not be able to sit on a bench either because they might need to have their own, for example, a wheelchair or some other type of contraption on which they need to sit.
Make a point on this. So I've seen that in my Gurdwaras where whenever like some MP comes to talk about his political views, they always take them for like langar and stuff, and they make sure they sit on the benches or chair and table.
All right, thank you for your input. We're gonna move on to the next question, which is, um, the person says homosexual marriages are a Western tradition. Why impose Western values into Sikhi? And then we have the opposite of that saying, how can you say LGBTQ weddings are a Western idea? There's been studies to show that LGBTQ is something from nature.
So
Well,
to
it's quite evident that it's not a Western idea because it's Western ideas that have made it illegal across most of the world. It comes from the Christian tradition where many countries have forbidden homosexual relationships or same-sex relationships.
coming from a historical and a scientific view, animals do, especially bonobos, chimpanzees, some great apes do show homosexual tendencies. With regarding who's in their group. Also, historically, many civilizations around the world. One famous one is the Greeks. Another one is a couple of ancient Hindu empires, ancient Indian to be more unbiased. Is that there was homosexuality. We do know that for sure. It's not just a Western thing.
Yeah, obviously, and look, if someone wants to, have a gay lifestyle and stuff, we're not saying that's banned, that's illegal. How dare you? Everyone's allowed to do what they want to, so should be free to do what you want. But when you try to bring Sikhi into it, and when you try to say that we should have Anand Karaj is what we want, this is what we want, that is what we want, Anand Karaj, it's not like that. Like I said, the advice I gave previously. But at the same time, Pritpal Paji, I'd like to ask you a question, my brother. Is there a gay gene?
So I'm not a scientist, so I can't tell you a scientific answer. All I can tell you is that, first of all, you called it a lifestyle. It is not a lifestyle choice. It is the way Guruji made me. Okay, there is more than enough evidence that's come out from research that being that approximately 10 to 15% of the population of the human race are somewhere other than straight on the spectrum. It could well be even more people, but because so many modern cultures forbid same-sex relationships or look down on them, there are many people who don't come out for that reason.
And Gagan, another thing to watch out for is that
No,
obviously
I didn't say that. I think I got mistaken there. I didn't say lifestyle like that. I meant I was saying that when someone wants who is gay and wants to like practice that, as in have a lifestyle of being married, have a same-sex marriage. I said we shouldn't condemn that if it's not an Anand Karaj. That's what I was saying. But I was saying if it's an Anand Karaj, then I should condemn that. That's what I was saying.
It's just because you did use the words, if they want to have a gay lifestyle or a homosexual lifestyle. As I say, it's not a lifestyle choice. Luckily, we are now managing to get equality for LGBT people in most countries, but we've got a long way to go.
So regarding,
I just need to clarify because I didn't want to upset you. So I meant it lifestyle as in practicing. So I don't want to ask you a personal question, but I'm not sure if you practice a gay, like you don't actively have a gay partner and practice it, dude. That's what I was saying like that. But
yeah, just leave the personal stuff out of it.
so
We're just talking about ideas here.
regarding the genetic question, there's actually research that goes both ways. There's research that goes, yes, maybe there is perhaps, there's new insights. This is a really recent study. It's there is an insight to a genetic architecture of perhaps same-sex sexual behavior. There's also some hormonal, regarding hormonal changes within a pregnant woman regarding same-sex attraction. But there's also a no side regarding this. There's a this is a little bit older, like 2-3 years older than the other study, is regarding perhaps there isn't. They haven't found.
Also, if you could, would you mind actually posting those sources in text voice so that other people can also verify them? Thanks. Just for citation.
Can I also just
go ahead.
also say a word of warning here as well? There has been lots and lots of academic study in things like eugenics throughout history, and some people still stand by it to say that if you're not a white Aryan person, then you are less intelligent, you have a smaller brain. We need to be really careful that we don't go down this path of othering people, because we, as a community, most of us are probably not white Aryan people, have that same finger pointed at us as well. And then if you think about the Sikhs who are LGBT, created by Vaheguru in this way, they are a minority within a minority. So, we need to stand together against all the people that are oppressed and persecuted.
In the scientific community, there is this consensus of it being natural, but there is wonder about how does it come about to be? Is it hormonal? Is it genetic? What is it? Is it does it start from the womb? Does it start from the alleles that you get, right? So there's a very, very a little bit it's a dark place right now regarding that. There's not too much known about what's really going on yet. Hopefully
I think regardless.
Guys, can we please speak one at a time, please, everyone? Prithpal Singh, you can finish your point, and then we'll move on to Karaj, and then if Upkar needs to respond, he can respond further. So Prithpal Singh, Karaj, and then go ahead.
I'm really uncomfortable with people maybe as I've just pointed out, that I don't really see why it makes any difference why Vaheguru has created me the way I am. If we believe in Vaheguru's creation, okay, Vaheguru has created me this way. Does it matter? If Vaheguru had created me with blonde hair or with brown hair, would that matter? Would that change anything? No, it wouldn't. That's the way I've been created by Vaheguru. So we if we're looking at it, we're not looking at it from a scientific position here. We're looking at it from a dharmic position and a religious perspective. So I'm just really concerned when people start going around, is it hormones? Is it genetics? At the end of the day, I am who I am. I am a Sikh. Okay, I believe in Vaheguruji. I believe in most of the things people have talked about today. Satkar of Guru Granth Sahib Ji, making sure that our Bani is protected, making sure we stand up, for the ideals that are given to us. So I don't see why I don't get equality for all those things that Vaheguru Ji has, created for us and told us this is the way we should be living our life, and why I should be persecuted when we're supposed to be the ones who stand up against the oppressors.
All right, thank you.
Sorry.
Go ahead. Wait, next is Kaur, Sharda Kaur ji, and then
Yeah.
after that it's Upkar Singh. So go ahead, Kaur.
Thank you. I'll be adding to what Prithpal said, just to say it's a very slippery slope, and it makes me wonder why you would want to know, aside from an academic interest perhaps, but why is it relevant to this discussion to say somebody's gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, gender fluid, gender non-binary, all of those various identities we have. Why do we need to understand what might be the reason for them? Isn't the point that we are all equal in God's creation, and it does not matter who and how. What is the reason behind somebody's creation if my access to my faith and my rights should be the same as yours? What makes you more better or more deserving? So I just wanted to, I feel uncomfortable and concerned about this line of questioning as well.
So I'd like to add on that before someone else speaks with a different topic. Again, we completely agree. Manas ki jaisa ek pehchan bo is a pangti from Guru Gobind Singh Ji that's spread. It is very common, very popular, and we completely agree. We're all the same. Maharaj da hukum hai, Maharaj da hukum hai, right? Hukum de jai chalana, nanak likhya naal, right? So we're not. Again, we've. Me and Gagan have made this point. We stated this many times that we're not here to judge someone because they're gay. We're not here. We're not saying that we believe that same-sex attraction or any LGBTQ it's not natural. We didn't say that, right? So we completely agree that it is natural, but we're not here to say that no one is better. But again, we have to we agree with the Khalsa of the past. We believe that Khalsa does not change. The Maryada of the Sikh Panth might change throughout history. We've seen evidence of that by looking at the historical Ratname. But Khalsa Mera Roop Hai Khas, right? Sarbo Granth, that's Gurbani is never going to be changed, and the Khalsa is described in Sarbo Granth. So we're never going to step out of that.
All right, thank you. We're going to move on to the next question, which is a bit long. It says, in most Sikh granths, i.e., such as Suraj Prakash, it says all of the gurus and early Sikhs had a Vedic marriage around the fire, which makes sense because Guru Granth Sahib Ji wasn't written yet, and Anand Karaj around Guru Granth Sahib Ji was first done by the Nirankari Baba Darbara Singh and was adopted by the Singh Sabha movement in the early 20th century. If we come up with different ceremonies after the gurus, why can't we amend and change them to cater to our LGBTQ plus Sikh brethren? So that's the current question that we're on right now. So feel free to give your thoughts on that. Anyone can jump in. But please take your turns and let other people speak. Go ahead.
I guess just a quick point. I feel like it just comes under the umbrella Sikh for us.
Your voice is
the whole concept.
Raman.
The whole thing is that like I feel like where it's like everyone brings up the point where it's like we need to change Sikh, we need to modernize it. Yeah, but the thing is like the whole concept is just you're supposed to change yourself. Sikhi's not supposed to change for you.
All right, thank you. So just to reiterate, the question is, since the marriage ceremonies have changed over time, why can the current marriage ceremony not be amended for LGBTQ? That's the current question right now. So if anyone wants to give their thoughts on that, go ahead. Just to be clear.
This is, I think, like the third time I've said this, is that historically the Anand Karaj is for the Khalsa, and the Khalsa is specifically described in Sarblo Granth, and if you want to look deeper, in Dasam and Ad Guru Granth Sahib Ji. So again, because it's a Khalsa ceremony, we have to treat it differently than we would treat cultural marriages. Cultural marriage functions. Some people, Sindhis might have their own thing, Punjabis might have their own thing. Again, people at different understandings of Sikhi might have their own thing. So again, I do not, Anand Karaj being changed is off. It's not something to talk about for me. Perhaps maybe the cultural functions regarding the way that they get the blessing, the same-sex couple may get blessings from the Guru through Sukhmani Sahib Path, Akhand Path Sahib. Maybe that could be that might be flexible.
Just a question on the. So you're saying it's a Khalsa, the Anand Karaj is a Khalsa tradition. The Khalsa was obviously created by Guru Gobind Singh Ji, yet the Anand Karaj verses were created by an earlier Guruji. So how is it only a Khalsa tradition? Could you explain that point, please?
So there's a difference between when the Maryada was created. So again, we have to look at the historical context. Guru Ramdas Sahib Ji Maharaj उन्होंने उच्चारण की थी बाणी लावा, ठीक है जी, and they did the Anand Karaj. But those Sikhs, you gotta remember that was for the Sikhs that had Charan Paul. Charan Paul was the version of Amrit back in that day, before Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj initiated the Khalsa through the Amrit Sanchar. So we have to remember that just because they had a different understanding of what Khalsa is, the understanding of the term Khalsa was still used. We can look up at Kabir Ji's Bani. Many Bani talks refer to the term Khalsa, the pure ones, the ones who have followed the Gurus, the ones who have given their man, their body, their mind, their wealth to the Guru. Everything is, they given to the Guru. Those we call them Khalsa. So and Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj institutionalized that with the Amrit Sanchar, made it a little bit more clear about what Khalsa is. So again, that in my understanding, that lava was for those that took Charan Pol.
All right, go ahead.
It's in my experience, it's not, as it's currently practiced, it's not limited to those who have taken Amrit though. The access to Anand Karaj is not limited to those specific individuals who are Amritari. Is that right? If it is the case that the Anand Karaj, because I think what you're trying to say is that, or have said over a few times, is that the Anand Karaj in your mind should be limited to people who have taken Amrit, and but that's not how it's practiced. So surely there's a discretion around who can access the Lama, the Anand Karaj, and it only became formalized as a code of conduct around it in the 20th century. Even though there is a history, obviously, but we can see, even with what you're saying, that it has evolved from when the Lama were written to when the Khalsa was formalized to when the entire marriage was formalized in the 20th century. So there does seem to be an evolution that Sikhi has gone through with the wedding process, if I might call it process. So what is the difficulty? I'm just trying to see, why is it that today, as we stand, we can't be open to to further evolution, to be able to make it more inclusive and accessible. And I'm not saying this to people who might be outside of the faith, but at least to people who are believers who are Sikhs and practicing Sikhi, why couldn't we make it more open to include those if they're from LGBT background or yeah.
So I kind of missed your first point. I was reading something, and could you please repeat that? Your first point, your very first point. After that, I listened.
I'm not sure where you caught on from, but I was just trying to say that we have seen that the access to Anand Karaj, or what even the Anand Karaj means, has evolved over time. What is it that is stopping us from continuing that evolution today and making it more open and inclusive?
Again, so one is Gurbani, the Pankti that we brought out in the beginning of this conversation. And if you would like me to bring that out, one, we have Gurbani that tells us what a marriage is. We have, there's different, of course, there's different perspectives, but all the perspectives on the basic level, they come down to one thing: man and woman of Anand Karaj. So again, so you're talking about the cultural change. So we can study this cultural change of Sikhi. So MacLeod has whatever, however you pronounce his name. He has, if you read a book, it's called the Khalsa Ratname, or the Khalsa. I forget the title of the book, and he goes through the Ratname. He goes through the Ratname of throughout history, throughout Sikh history. Pai Chopa Singh. I've mentioned these names before. Pai Chopa Singh Ratnama, Pai Desa Singh Ratnama. He also goes to the SGP, the new 1945 version of the Rat Maryada. He goes to the Dandim Riksal Rat Maryada a little bit. He goes to the Nahang Das Rat Maryada. He goes to Prem Sumarag. He goes to Zindagi Nama, Tankha Nama. So all these different sources, and we can see, if you were to study, that the Anand Karaj was more or less the same regarding the actual ceremony. So regarding outside ceremonies, they changed throughout history, regarding what they have to do. They have to give something to the Panjapyare, or they have to, regarding those small ceremonies. But regarding the actual Anand Karaj, it was only for the Khalsa, and it was only regarding a man and a woman. So we're always going to stick with that. We're going to look what's been consistent throughout history, right? And of course, the Rahat Murada can change, right? We've seen that throughout history. Of course, it can change, right? But we have to change it according to Gurmat. We have to change it according to these Itihasic granths. So when we make a decision as a panth, we look at three things. One, the consensus of the Sikh panth, right? Which actually comes third. So number one is Gurbani. So Sarblo, Dasam, Ad. Second is Itihasic granths. So Suraj Prakash, Panth Prakash, Gurbilas, etc. Right? These Ratname come in that as well. And then third is the Panth together. What's the decision that they want to make together? And remember, Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj gave the Guruship, gave the leadership of the Khalsa to the Panth. And we can see that the Panth more or less agrees on this stance. They agree on this stance that what Anand Karaj is. You can look at different jathas, different schools of thoughts, and they agree on this. It's not to say that we're against same-sex marriage, but we're to say that Anand Karaj is not meant for same-sex marriage. Do you have I made myself clear on that? This does not come from me. I try to be as historical and relating to Gurbani as much as possible. And if we go back to Gagan Paji, they brought a pankti from a line from Itihasic Granth, what names what a Khalsa should be like, right? Kade not Gandu Ran Chada, right? So what it is, it's I think I'm going to taking too much time, but we can understand what the Khalsa is meant to be. The Khalsa has certain characteristics, and we must abide by that.
Can I come in on a few points that you've made? I mean, again, you keep saying that the consensus of the Banth is, but actually nobody has asked me the question, and I'm part of the Banth. So how can you say it's the consensus because I've not been asked the question? Surely, if it's a question that needs to be asked, somebody needs to be approaching the LGBT community as well, from whoever the decision makers are, to be maybe including us in the information gathering piece in order to be able to get a full understanding of what the position of the LGBT plus community looks like and what our challenges are and issues are. Because here, I know we're talking about Anand Karaj specifically, but as I say, not everybody wants Anand Karaj. It's more about being able to even, within the faith, be able to be ourselves, our authentic selves, as created by Vaheguru, is a big issue. But you can't make a decision about me without consulting somebody who looks or sounds like me.
As Gaganveerji said, that you do have the opportunity. We must try our best if we want
You can say we have the opportunity, but I gave an example of an architectural historian who has been trying to get the Akal Takht to listen to her and the SGPC to listen to her about trying to give World Heritage status to Harmandir Sahib, and nobody will even entertain a discussion with her on something that I'm sure most of us in the Banth would agree is an important thing for us to have international protection for the Harmandir Sahib is really important. They will not even have that discussion with anybody. So you're making it sound as though it's easy that I can go and walk in and have that discussion. But I have told you, we are struggling to have that conversation with anybody, even in our local Gurdwara, within our families, within our local community, because of the prejudices that have been created against us. So therefore, it's not that easy.
Okay, so
and in the same point, just to add to that as well, again, you spoke about unanimous, largely unanimous within the Panth. I attended a webinar from equally academic scholars this earlier today, and they seem to hold a very different view, which was absolutely not in line with what you're suggesting here. And they were citing the same sources in terms of looking at Rehat, in terms of history, collective community spirit, and Gurbani, and they seem to be coming to a very different, starkly different conclusion without being prescriptive around this is how you should be or you shouldn't be. But they were very clearly saying that this is a conversation that is the current Rehat Marada is outdated and needs a new, fresh conversation. That's a 2020 conversation, and it seems like it deserves a new start or an evolution, and we owe it to our Panth. So just saying that it's a unanimous decision, that's just what you're basically saying is the powerful people who are currently holding, as Kulbir earlier was saying, the cis men in power in the Akal Takht are holding that power, and suddenly that's like the voice we need to listen to, which isn't, as Pritpal was saying, you haven't consulted other voices, and I think that doesn't call for unanimity. You're just talking about the powerful voices.
So
let me respond to him.
Okay.
Let me respond to him because I made a lot of points, and they are valid because I do totally understand and I sympathise too, because if you're trying to push and you said you're not getting anywhere. So I'm gonna make about 3-4 points. Okay, the first point I'm gonna make is so we have Dharmender Singh Baji here, yeah. So Dharmender Singh, you're the leader of Sarbat. Is that correct? You founded it.
That is correct. Yes, I helped run the group, and yeah.
Okay, that's amazing. So whenever lockdown finishes, I would suggest you and maybe some of you and take some of your colleagues, take some of the people involved in Sarbat, buy a plane ticket, go to Akal Takht Sahib directly with some Sangat and voice your concern there. If you are serious about this, which I'm sure you are, okay, then you should definitely go to Akal Takht as soon as lockdown finishes.
I mean, that's assuming that the Akal Takht actually understands the context of what we're operating in. Do
No, but
they?
you can't. Yeah. Well, but you can't just say, look, there's cis males, they're judged, they're doing this, they're doing that. If you haven't even gone there and spoke to them first, if you go there and you receive backlash or whatever, then you have a point, and I'm with you. But if you
I,
haven't been there yet, then you can't
can I?
really,
Okay. Can I? I've told you about the difficulties about getting access to this. You're challenging us. I'm challenging you to come with us. You take me to where I need to go to make my point, but I can't do it in Punjabi, so I will need some support from whoever will be able to make the point to
But I don't
the
support your
decision
point.
All right,
makers.
guys,
I don't
guys,
support
one,
your
one
point.
at a time, one
But
at a
even
time, one at a time. Prithviraj Singh,
in
go
order
ahead.
to be
Go
able
ahead,
to,
Prithviraj Singh.
in order to help me have that conversation, because I do not know if I will be able to have that conversation so that they can understand my perspective, and to make that point. But the challenge to you is not to come and support me, is to give me access to the people that make this decision, because I can assure you I won't even be able to get in the door.
All right.
So I'll just challenge you to come with me.
Okay.
I mean,
Guys, can we please
sorry.
not make this
No.
personal? Go ahead, Dharminder Singh. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah.
So just a final question. Sorry, point I want to make. Everyone is expecting on this conversation, Discord we're having, that LGBT Sikhs be held to such an incredibly high standard that no one else has been subjected to in the past. So I know we're having a discussion about Anand Karaj. Anand Karaj, it sounds like, is probably not the institution that LGBT people, as many of you suggest, should have access to for all sorts of reasons. In the same way, the discussion is never focused on whether interfaith marriages should be Anand Karaj. So I'm not sure whether this standard being applied to LGBT Sikhs is helpful. I'd like to hear from you. Why is this standard being applied to LGBT Sikhs, but not to anyone
Sure.
else?
I'll respond to that, bro. So I don't know if you came late or not, but I've probably said about 2-3 different times about interfaith marriages and how they're interfaith Anand Karaj, sorry. So an interfaith Anand Karaj is actually an oxymoron. It can't take place. It doesn't make sense. I said that 3-4 times, that if you accept Shri Guru Granth Sahib Ji Sache Paatshah as your guru, as your only guru, then by the definition of the Anand Karaj and the Lava, you're rejecting everything else. All other belief systems, you're rejecting them. You're saying no to them. So interfaith doesn't make any sense. It's oxymoron. So I don't. And you mentioned a point of classing LGBT people to a higher standard, right?
Double standard, basically. That's what.
Yeah. What actually Upkar Singh has also said, that traditionally it was for Amritaris, so that's to everyone, whether you're straight or gay or whatever you are. If it would only be if you've taken Amrit, if you're actually at a decent, at like a strong start point anyway. So that would be on your red, on your following Sikhi, on your Nityanem, etc. It wouldn't be based on anything else. So the standard is the same to everybody, right? And to just respond to a few points by Pritpal quickly, and then of course Kulbir Singh quickly just respond to Pritpal as well. You mentioned some other points about I forgot some points that I raised.
It's okay. You can
Can I just add
raise them
something
later.
to?
Go ahead.
Okay.
So the only thing I want to add now is that eventually LGBT Sikhs should have access to an institution and not treated equally as compared to everyone else. The kind of discussions we're having, I've had them in the past, where, I mean, if we could do a statistical exercise, we can kind of see how many non-Amrit Shakya Sikhs have Anand Karj without any objection from anyone. And I can understand it's a bit complicated to kind of extricate people saying, "Oh, you're not Amrit Shakya. You don't have access to this institution. You have access to this institution." But that's never been quantified. So the point I'm trying to make is, eventually LGBT Sikhs should have access to an institution within the Sikh faith that makes them solemnize their partnership with each other. It'll happen sooner or later. I just want to get your thoughts on it of other people.
I completely agree with that. That we should have access to institutions to make changes. Based on our own consensus and debate and discussion, and I believe that completely. Again, so what I want to say is that throughout this conversation, I just want to put the point that from the place that we've been coming from regarding this discussion is completely Gurbani based, historical Granth based, and I just want to say that of course it's different. Society, culture, it's completely different. There is much toxic hatred of the LGBTQ community. And again, that is completely, I'm not educated enough to know how to combat that. My best guess would be education, but there are many people who have their ears closed. Again,
So,
the ideal of Gurbani and what reality is completely different. And me personally, I have no answer to that reality because I'm not, educated enough to respond to
so
that.
I'm just going to make a quick point. I know, Gurkhan, we're running out of time, but I'll make a very quick point. Whenever we've had these discussions of equality within these contexts where people are sharing their opinions, mostly talking to straight people with certain viewpoints, whenever mention comes up of LGBT Sikhs, the attention immediately goes on to sexual behavior. I can make it. I can see the comment section here, and that tends to happen a lot. But I mean, LGBT Sikhs are more than sexual behavior. They want access to the same institutions like you folks have access to. And the way you do that is by ensuring that an institution exists sooner or later. If you're always thinking about my behavior when I talk about LGBT issues, that's actually your problem. I can't educate you any further. I want to have the same access to the institutions that my sisters have or that my parents have, and I'll eventually work towards getting that. And it'll be solemnized because I mean, Sarbat talks a lot about equality for all, which is such a guiding principle for ours. And it is at such a forefront that everything else is fluff. I'm sorry.
Okay, so let's say two gay men want to have an Anand Karaj, right? When they read the Palle di Shabd, Palle Tende Lagi, right? Who's going to tie the Palla and who's going to hold it? Who's going to be in front? Who's going to act as the woman there? Who's going to act as the man there? Because it doesn't fit into that. You're trying to shoehorn this, trying to fit into a squared circle. Like you're trying to fit this, which I understand, but it doesn't fit in the Anand Karaj. It doesn't go there. You haven't got history
I
to
can
base it.
understand
You
that.
haven't got Gurbani to base it.
I mean, but as you're suggesting, that many non-Shakya Sikhs have that institution, access to the institution, and they're never asked any further questions. Isn't that unfair?
That is unfair.
So, I mean, the discussion we're having focuses a lot on LGBT people accessing Anand Karj. But this question is never asked if people who are just not as eligible for Anand Karj as LGBT people are
We did talk
accessing
about
Anand Karj. No, I mean, it does. I mean, to be honest, I don't know how much scrutinizing happens across the world for people who want to access an Anand. I'm sorry, but lots of people access an Anand based on your criteria shouldn't have access to an Anand, but they do access an Anand. Am I wrong?
You're completely right. People, again, in the beginning of this discussion, we were talking about how there should be courses and teaching what Anand Karaj really is regarding non-Namrataris, regarding interfaith, and regarding LGBTQ, right? So
that is helpful. Yes,
of course, there is we can talk all we want, but there is certainly it's very hard getting this acting regarding the Sikh Panth because the Sikh Panth today seems so chaotic, right? And again, reality is completely different than what we what we think is what our ideals are according to Gurbani and Ityas, right? So again, we do recognize that. I have no idea what the homosexual experience is, so I cannot talk for the homosexual or the LGBTQ community because I do not know what they go through. But all I'm here to discuss is what Anand Karaj is, and I will solely focus on what Anand Karaj is.
I mean, one comment I'd like to make, which is my final comment before I hand over to Gurkaran, is my brothers and sisters, my Sikh brothers and sisters, please, can we all work towards an institution that we LGBTQ Sikhs can access now and in the future for us to feel equal with you, for us to find the same solace in our faith as you folks. Please help us create an institution or create or formalize something. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say. I mean, if you feel Anand Karaj is not the institution, please ensure that we all work together to ensure that there is one in the future. This
Of
is going to be
course.
my final comment.
Of course, I think there was a discussion regarding that with Gurkar, and Gurkar, you may know more about what the discussion that took place regarding that new
Yeah.
institution regarding.
Actually, so during our previous discussion that we had on this about 5 months ago, we had Sikh Twitter historian Jung Nihang come on to briefly speak on this. So he discussed about how historically the Khalsa did the Havan ceremony involving the fire, but instead of a Brahman, it was performed using a Granthi, and how it's mainly some Nihangs and the Namtaris who only really do this. He also spoke about respecting the current Anandkar standard, but also instead of just saying, okay, LGBTQ people just have your own civil marriage, he's saying that, hey, we can actually, as a panth, get together and create a unique, distinct ceremony for LGBTQ people, which I think is a great idea if everyone's down for it. I certainly am. That way you keep both camps happy, so it's kind of a win-win situation. But yeah, we invited Jung Hang here, but sadly he wasn't able to make it due to prior arrangements. So we're probably going to move on to the next question now because we spent a lot of time on this one and we're running out of time. So the next question is, if it's if the Anand Karaj is to have kids, then what about people who can't have kids? Does this mean that they can't get married or that their marriage is not valid?
So there's a quick answer to this. The marriage is valid because we have many sakis from Guru Amar Das Sahib Ji, from Guru Ram Das Sahib Ji. You know, they gave, they blessed a couple with a child who could not have kids. Mata Sahib Kaur, they actually adopted after the Shahidi of the Char Sahibzade. They adopted a child who was the second Ajit Singh, Baba Ajit Singh. They can adopt. The adoption is something that Sikhi does permit according to history, according to the Itas of our gurus, the Itas of Gursikhs throughout the past. So there is an option for that, yeah.
And another question is having a family via not an intercourse something against Sikhi, such as adoption or like in vitro fertilization? So we already spoke on the adoption part because the Guru himself adopted. But what about in vitro fertilization?
I think that's okay. I know many Gursikh families that have done that. Again, that's anecdotal evidence, but I think that's almost the same thing as adoption, basically. I think it could be in the same category. So I think that is allowed. But Gagan or anybody else, if you guys want to add on, please.
All right, we'll just rapid fire through these questions. Big one is another question is, if Vaiguru has a combination of both masculine and feminine elements, normally we think that in society that means a boy weds a girl, question mark. In modern times, it seems that some men embody more feminine characteristics. So should we view Anand Karaj from a modern perspective or traditional perspective?
Can you provide a text for that? Or is
Yeah,
that
I put the text in text for voice section if anyone wants to see the current question. And these are all based off the anonymous questions.
May I answer? But like I know I'm answering everything, but like I kind of do have an answer for this,
Sure,
according to Gurbani. So if someone wants to take over, please take over. I don't want to, just just speak because I don't think I know too much about this regarding many concepts. So if Vaheguru has the combination of both masculine and feminine elements, normally we think in society that means a boy weds a girl. In modern times, it seems so. I don't really understand that myself that way. Normally, we think in how that relates. If you're talking about the relationship between the soul and Vaheguru, again, that is just a metaphor. That is just for us to grasp that concept of what that love is truly like. what that love between soul and Vahiru is truly like. And regarding the masculine and feminine elements, if you're going into the Dasam and Ad, like the Shaktis and Maya and so whatnot, I'm not going to go too deep into that. But again, that is just for us on this limited level of labeling things. We like to label things. We like to because otherwise we can't understand things. So again, that's just us for to understand such concepts. And it just relates to Sargun and Nirgun, the formless and the formed Vaheguru. And normally we think in society that, okay, in modern times it seems that men embody more feminine characteristics. Should we view Anand Karaj? I don't get what is feminine characteristics that men embody. What does that mean? Again, that is due to culture. Many cultures have different understandings of what's feminine and what's masculine.
Would anyone else like to jump in that question? I know it's mostly been Upkar, but if anyone else wants to jump in, feel free to.
I have a comment. I think I read somewhere earlier, or I heard earlier today, that there are some shabads that were written by our gurus that they wrote from their perspective with feminine pronouns. So, like, just to say that our Gurbani is very genderless and very fluid. Yeah, that's all.
I think I just covered that what they meant. It was to grasp that concept of the connection between the soul and Vaheguru. It does not mean if you look at any Purat and Satik, any old understanding, any interpretation and commentary of Gurbani, it says Estri di Niyai, like a woman, like a female, like a married, like a bride. So Niyai means the metaphor. So it is a metaphor.
All right, next question is, what if you have two gay men, both Amritari and immersed in Sikhi? Why would there be a bias against them from getting an Anand cottage? Question mark. But it's okay for a Mona, non-practicing Sikh that eat meat and drink to get Anand cottage. So it's asking about if they're both Amritari. Like for example, you were saying it's only Amritaris who can have it. This one's saying if they're both LGBTQ and they're Amritari. And then it's also talking about the double standard. Like we've already talked about the double standard, so you could probably tackle the question about both of them being Amritari, since that was your definition of them. Karaj, go ahead.
Well, I mentioned this before as well. Like a few times I mentioned it. That it doesn't make it right if someone is doing something wrong, then they are doing something wrong. It doesn't mean just because they're not gay that it's allowed for them. It's still wrong, but they're two different topics though. That's the point here. We shouldn't. I'm not saying anyone's doing it on purpose, but it is disingenuous to combine the two into one. They're two separate topics. One is about a Sikh who's not practicing, who's doing stuff wrong against Madhya and wants to have an Anand, even though he doesn't even believe in it. He wants to do it, right? That's incorrect. One is, let's say there's a person who is gay and he does love the Guru, but he wants to do a same-sex marriage, and from what the arguments are presented using Gurbani, that it's not compatible. So they both don't work.
I feel like there is you're sort of eating the cake and having having the cake and eating it too. So you're saying that the lava have been written with a metaphor in mind, where it's describing a relationship with the guru, and really that's the union that it's describing, and that's where the metaphor and the gender comes in, but it's not describing the gender of the two people that are getting married. But when it comes to then us saying, right, so that's not describing the gender of the two people getting married, then you also come back and say, no, it is restrictive, and it is describing the gender of the two people getting married in a way that also describes that one person has a specific role and the other person doesn't. But when we start thinking about it from a metaphorical perspective, so it feels like you're holding it on from both accounts to say, oh, but no, that's a metaphor, but oh, we don't extend that metaphor to the actual position. So it feels like you're standing on both grounds, and you're being inconsistent in your interpretation there.
we're gonna go back to the line that Gagan brought, of what what a Khalsa is, and I don't want to say that line again, but we do remember. Hopefully, we do remember what that line is. That
Which line? Sorry, which one?
the Panth Prakash one.
Oh,
Kabe
kade
na,
na
yeah.
gandu ran chada, kade na
Yeah.
mande khet. Yeah.
If you're Amritari, you have to go into battle, and it was on that what the Panth Prakash understands is Gagan can explain.
Wait, I have a question. So, what about the Amritari Nirmalas or the Amritari Seva Panthis or the Amritari Taksalis who don't go into
Oh,
battle? What about them?
Taksalis are supposed to go into battle. They're in the Khalsa Panth. Nirmala, they're not in the Khalsa Panth.
No, but there's a lot of Nirmalas like Swami Ram Singh who are also Amritari.
Yeah, yeah, and
That's
they will
present.
fight as well. There
Yeah,
are
they
Nirmala
will
who will
fight.
fight, and they will.
That's present day thing. Nirmala weren't really supposed to carry shastras. They weren't really supposed to carry wear the Khalsa Varna.
Yeah,
Taksalis regarding that do come into Khalsa, and in recent history they have fought. Right, so
yeah, because a lot of Nirmala didn't take Amrit back in the day, but anyone who takes Amrit, they have the same breath, no matter what tradition, gender, whatever, right? And also, the Pankti before, right, was it's not from the lava, but it's from it's a shabd which is read at Anand Karaj. Tan per ehena akhin is God, what's the Pankti again?
one sec. Tan per ehna akhiyan, something like that. So I just have it here.
If we look at
बहन इकट्ठे होए एक जोत दोए मूर्ति तन पर कहिया सोए.
Yeah, that's the one. So Tan and Pir, if you look now, this is not me saying it, right? If you look at the scholars, who are the ones who study this pre-colonial as well, because you could say, oh, maybe it's Abrahamic Christianity influence of being against gays, etc. So then let's go pre-colonial at the Faridkot Tika, and so that's basically a commentary on Gurbani written, and that Tan and Pir is man and woman. And that is talking about physical man and woman. And now, when you look at, like I said before, when you look at Gurbani, right? If we're looking at the physical aspect of Gurbani, living in the world, not the spiritual, the physical one, it's always man and woman in terms of Anand Karaj. Historically and Gurbani as well. And another point that I mentioned before as well. So let's take one person. If they want to have a lesbian Anand Karaj, right? When the shabd is read, the palle di rasam, yeah, palle tende lagi. The palla is meant to the woman is meant to grasp the palla, is tied around the man, and the woman holds on to it, right? So if it's a gay marriage or a lesbian marriage, like it doesn't fit. Like I said before, it doesn't fit, because who's going to be in front, who's going to be behind, who's going to the palla going to be attached to, who's going to be holding it? It has to be a man and a woman to uphold that Gurbani line.
It's ironic you said that, because somebody just sent an anonymous question saying, what would the Sikh view be if a transgender woman, so male to female, and then a biological male getting married? Like that
So
just came in
firstly,
right when you said that.
yeah.
By the way.
Oh, that's amazing. Well done. So firstly, when you say someone's transgender, again, that's someone who mostly look. It's something. If you want to change your gender, that's not really accepting hukum. It's not really accepting hukum, and so transgender is another thing that you don't see throughout history. I don't know what the correct term to use is. I may be correct. Someone wants to jump in, you surely can.
No,
but
see,
a lot the term used in India maybe is hijra or kusra. These
Kusra,
terms are
yeah.
used.
But see, the
kusra, that's
issue
the term
with
used.
issue with that is that at birth there are certain people that are born with multiple, like what are they called?
Ambiguous like organs,
Yeah,
right? What are you
multiple
talking about?
organs. There's certain ones where if you
Hermaphrodites.
if you give the baby a certain amount of hormones, that, like for example, if the baby it could have been either a male or female, so there is that leeway that you can choose, that modern medical science has shown. So, and as we know, as Japji Sahib says, right, everything is within hukum, nothing exists outside of hukum, right? So that argument there is just gone. Everything's within hukum. It doesn't matter what it is, good and bad. So what would you do with the technology that we have today if somebody was able to do that? That's what the question is asking. Would that be then considered proper? Because so the criteria you guys have put forward, so they have to be amritari, and then one biologically male, one biologically female. So what this question here is proposing is that with our modern day technology and with the fact that we know how certain humans can develop from birth, they can change it, right? Would that then be acceptable? So it's fitting all your criteria. What would you
Yeah,
say then?
well, the thing is, if you look at the Panj Pyare, right, in order to be a Panj Pyara, you have to have all your limbs, all your angs. So if someone goes and gets a bionic arm, can they be part of the Panj Pyare? No, not really.
No, but
So
we're
that's the
talking
same
about
thing here.
We're talking about Anand Karaj. We're not talking
Yes,
about
the same. I'm talking about the same thing here.
no, because disabled
If you're
people
gonna
can't join the
unnaturally
Khalsa then.
change your, not Panj Pyare, they can't be part of the Panj
No,
Pyare.
we're not talking about Panj
No,
Pyare
no,
here. We're
my
talking about
brother, let me
Anand
speak,
Karaj.
please. Let me speak, my brother. You're not
Okay,
understanding the point I'm
go
making.
ahead.
Listen very carefully to everyone as well. Brothers and sisters, listen very carefully. I'm trying to use an analogy to apply it. If you look at the Panj Pyare, right, in order to be one of the Panj, not the Khalsa, but in order to be one of the Panj Pyare, you must have all your limbs. Okay. Now, if someone says, "Oh, wait a minute, I'm going to go get a bionic arm," can I now be part of the Panj Pyare? Well, no, you can't. All right. So in the same way, if you're gonna try to use unnatural ways to change your body and go have a change your organs and naturally have the operation, etc., change your gender, that's not persiki. And in order to do that, so you can try to find a loophole to get in that Anand, no, you've totally missed the point. So no, of
But
course not.
see, okay, no offense, Paji, but logically speaking, you are shifting the goalpost here. All right, so as it was clearly described in the first place, the human body can be a spectrum, right? As described using the medical examples, where doctors can give certain hormones to babies where they can develop one way or another. They can fit that same criteria. We're not talking about here adults here magically going and doing it and stuff like that just for that excuse of that loophole. We're not talking about that. We're talking about somebody who genuinely transitions from male to female, having that process then, right? So it's kind of shifting the goalpost from saying, okay, first they have to be Amritari, okay, check mark. Then they have to be biologically male and female. All right. Well, the human body, there's a lot of rare cases like that, and with technology we can do that. So once that's done, so what you're suggesting here is that a person has to be biologically male from birth, and
No,
then
no, no. I thought
Amritari,
you were
and
talking.
then
I thought you were talking about people who change the gender, like like when they're older. So I thought you were talking about that. The example you gave, I'm not aware of that. Are you saying that when someone's a baby and they're given?
yeah.
Can you explain that bit again? I didn't understand that
So
bit.
basically,
I
obviously,
think you
not
guys are
all
talking about
babies are this.
intersex.
Or sorry, Dr. G, could you do you want to explain this concept? Because you're actually a doctor.
Who?
I'm talking about the Sharda Kaurji, our doctor that we have here.
Oh,
Is she listening?
I don't know, but there's something called intersex where you have like gonads, right? And so you can be born without anything, if I recall correctly, and then later on, you could develop into a woman or you could develop into a man. So that you're born a woman, but then you can develop into a man or something like that.
So I can actually talk about intersex. It's basically where you don't have the distinguishing characteristics of either a male or a female. So it could go both ways. So if we're going to say now the Anandakaj is only reserved for people that are biologically born male or females, you have to understand that there are people that are born that are none of them, right? So then does that exclude them from partaking in the Anandakaj just because they weren't born a male or a female?
Can I just
So,
clarify? Can I just
Yeah, go
clarify
for it.
the transgender point here? Obviously, I'm not transgender, but I have worked with very many transgender people generally, mostly non-Sikh. But what people are missing sometimes is a point around their experience. So when people say changing their gender, they're not changing their gender because the gender they were identified at birth by a doctor is not the gender that they were born as. And when they are able to self-identify their own gender and to say, actually, I am this gender, that is how they experience it. So it's not changing their gender, it is embracing the gender that they feel they were born with.
So
Wait,
regarding
just quick question. So, Dr. G, could you please speak on the transition from male to female, or when babies are in the womb and their gender isn't necessarily determined, where the doctor has to make a choice for it? Could you please speak a bit more about that? Because you're an actual doctor here, you're actually qualified here.
Sure. I agree with what Prithpal said, but I don't think there is one single experience that can capture everybody, different people's unique journeys and identities. So I don't think I think we should be wary of generalizing from one rule to say this captures every person who's transgender or does not feel like they were born in the gender they feel they identify with. And the point is really what Kripal was trying to say, that quite often with trans people or people who struggle with the gender that was assigned to them, either they're born as intersex, and so they have genitalia of both genders, or and the doctor assigns one or the other having that position, or the parents decide they in some situations, or they are born with one set of genitalia but are do not feel like they identify in that gender role assigned to them, and really maybe they were born as a man with a penis, but they identify as a woman, and really it's coming down to, if you want me to translate it into Sikhi principles and vocabulary, in my mind it's a way of thinking. Their soul is a female soul. They identify as female, whereas their body, which is their material grounding, doesn't. I think the idea that I keep hearing back again and again from Sikhi is that you shouldn't be attached to your material presence. So the counter argument made against trans people in this conversation and every other conversation I find that is quite against trans people, is that you're suddenly valuing their material presence a lot more than their soul, which is extremely contrary and contradicts what you're saying about how the soul should be what we follow, and that's where our Sikhi lies and that's where our faith lies. So I think we need to be careful about what we value in what conversation and what agenda we're following. So I just wanted to highlight that a lot of times our agenda really dictates how we're following something or the other. So I think we should be careful. But I can clarify further, but I hope that helps.
So there is a Gurbani talk regarding intersex people, individuals. So because I don't remember where it is, I don't know. I'm not gonna speak about it, and I believe that we should hold that conversation until we can find what Gurbani says. So because Gurbani is the supreme authority of us, of the Sikh Panth. So regarding, I just want to make it clear. I keep noticing this, is that the soul, because the soul in Gurbani is references as female, does not mean that it's female. That's just a metaphor. The soul is actually na narahan, right? Nothing. Vaheguru is referenced as the husband, Lord, as the husband of the soul. But really, there is no gender between the soul and Vaheguru. There's no difference. But we need to learn that by following Sikhi, by doing bhakti. And the soul does not have any tendencies. The soul does not have a certain attraction to anything other than Vaheguru. The soul has no desire. So I believe, coming from a theological point of view, that many are mistaken in believing that we should follow the soul, because if we were to follow the soul, the only way we can go is Vaheguru. And there's no relationship with the physical world that the soul has. None at all.
All right, thank you, Upkar. So we're almost at 3 hours now. So we're just gonna burn through our last question, and then we'll have like a free flow discussion, or we'll choose to wrap it up. We'll see how it goes. So last question is, what about a person? Well, actually, I'm just gonna first just copy paste this into text for voice so everyone else can read it. There we go. So the question is, what about a person with congenital issues such as androgen insensitivity syndrome, like someone who appears female but is genetically male? Can they have Anand Karaj with a female? So basically, they're both female. Wait, they both appear female, but one is genetically male, with their organs, like they're genetically male, and are internal, not external. So basically, one is biologically male, one is biologically female, but they both appear female. Can they have an Anand Karaj? Okay, assuming they're Amritari. Let's just say that as well. So that check marks the other thing that you wanted. All right, so Gagan, do you wanna respond to this one?
Sorry, bro. I don't understand the question at all. I don't understand any of the terms, bro.
Okay. Basically, what they're saying is that one is biologically male, one is biologically female, but due to hormones, the one that's biologically male appears female, but still has all the male organs. So one is male, one is female. They just both appear female, like looks wise. Can they still have an Anand, assuming they meet your other criteria of being Sikh Amritari? Yeah. So would that fulfill your criteria that you're setting, or would the
No, I'm not saying a criteria. Sorry, I never set criteria ever in my life. The criteria is always the guru. I don't know about that.
No, but you said they have to be
but-
Amritari, which is by definition a criteria. I'm not I'm not contesting you. I'm
my
just speaking
criteria. It's not my
Okay,
criteria.
but the criteria that
I
you're
have a
putting
point.
forward,
I have
because
a
they
shot.
allow it in Saj Tadis, they allow it, right?
I have a shot regarding all of this.
Alright, go
So I have to go. So sorry about that. So for any mistakes that I've made, any feelings that I've hurt, please forgive me. Again, where we can accept each other, we can agree to disagree always, right? Sikh for everyone. Just because I said something doesn't mean it's right. Just because someone else says something doesn't mean it's right. Right? We're here to find Vahiru. So this is the shab. This is from Pai Gurdas Javara. So Pai Gurdas just says, I will provide the meaning as well. Kitade anne aakhiyan, kitade hi disana kaane. So many people are blind, many people are one-eyed. Kitade chunne firan, kitade ratiyane uktane. Many people, they have, they may only see a little bit. Their eyesight is, they suffer from, biological problems, we can say. Kitade nakte gun gune, kitade bolle buche lane. So many people, with the cleft lips, many people, that are deaf, and many people are born without ears. Kitadea gallad galir angar sulli vein vehane. Many people are, are suffering from tumors from birth. Some people have no organs; they're missing organs. Tunde bande kitade ganje lunje kori jane. Many people are maimed. Many people are bald. Many people, before they've reached old age. Many people are without hands. Many people are born with a disease. Kitade lule pingole, kitade kubbe hoy kurane. Many people are disabled, crippled, hunchback. Kitade khusre hijade, kitade gunge tutlane. Many people are born intersex. Many people are, khusre means eunuch. Hijade, it belongs in the LGBTQ community. Many people are, born like this, right? Kitade khusre hijade, kitade gunge. Many people are born, medically retarded. Many people, they stutter when they speak. Gore pure vina avana jane, right? So, but regarding this, even if they are born with these things and they walk away from the guru, if they don't, naam nahi japde. The end of the game is to do Naam Japna, to follow Sikh, do Seva of others, Nishkam Seva, Niskam Simran, to Ardas for the grace of Guruji to take you further, to make you one with Vahiru, right? Without the Guru's grace, even these will remain in the cycle of reincarnation. Even these people will remain that have been born like this within the cycle of karma. So let's get, these again at the end of the day, what's really important is getting just across out of these labels and getting towards Vaheguru. So I'll leave it at that. So if I've made any mistakes, my understanding is very, very limited. Please forgive me. Deho Sajane Sisriya Jehovah Sahib Somel Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
All right, thank you, Avkar Singh. Would anyone else like to give any closing thoughts before we wrap it up for today? Pritpal Singh or Dharminder Singh or Gagan Singh or Dr. G, would anyone else like to say anything before we wrap it up?
I'd like to come back to a conversation that Pritpal and Gagan were having a bit earlier around approaching the Akal Takht, and I'd be interested in seeing whether somebody from this group, Gagan or anybody else, can help us at Sarbat get in touch with and have that conversation, help us establish that conversation. You're challenging us to fight and establish our own rights with the highest authority, but it'll be, I'd like to, just as Pritpal said, I'd like to throw back that same challenge to you to say, can you help us get that conversation set up?
No, but just because I'm a straight cis male, as you said, that doesn't mean that I automatically have a speed dial to Akal Takht Sahib. I mean, the same thing, the same process I have to go through, you would also have to go through. Now, my advice was to, obviously, Pritpal Paji has also said that, the heritage site thing, right? So, which is true as well. But I'm just saying that that if you haven't tried that avenue, just at least try it. If you, that's my advice to you, bro.
Yeah, but we don't know how to get there. That's the trouble. So we're saying, if you know how to get there, show us the way. Or if somebody else knows the way, show us how to get there. Sorry? You need this is the trouble though. You need to have connections there. You need to be connected to a Gali party or whoever else might be responsible there. In order you can, as long as you've got contacts, you can get in there. I can't get in there without any contacts. So if you've got anybody's got contacts, let me know who they are. I'll get me in the room and I'll have that conversation. As will Shard and others here.
I was gonna throw in something really quickly. So my Nanaji was part of that printing Sarup controversy out in Vancouver. I'm gonna try to ask him and see who he had to contact in the Akali Dal party and in the SGPC office to facilitate that printing, and then whatever happened afterwards. I mean, they changed their minds according to him. So I'm gonna see if he can give me some of those contacts.
All right, sure.
And maybe we
Gursevik
can
Singh will actually get you in contact with Pritpal Singh. Pritpal Singh, I'll forward you the contact info for Gursevik Singh. We'll see if we can actually get something realistically done rather than, just debate about it on the internet, So Dharminder Singh, you would like to give some words? Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I'd like to say something. We've had some really encouraging discussions here and from CKRI, and some Starbucks volunteers have been part of that. And it's really encouraging to see that the discussion is truly moving on to the next step. Historically, as I kept on saying, that the discussion always focused on, as I said, the moment you mentioned that you're LGBT and you work for a Sikh support charity, the discussion, mainly from other Sikhs, always focuses on sexual behavior. That's where the first attention goes to. And now it's encouraging to see that there are other issues, and equality comes to mind first before anything else, and having access to the same institutions or similar institutions, and not treating people like second-class citizens, etc. So it is really encouraging to see that, and today's discussion have been really helpful. So thank you very much, all.
All right, thank you. And if anyone would like to get in contact with Sarbat, let me know. I can forward you Pritpal Singh's contact info, or you can check out sarbat.net. Again, we'd like to say thank you to everyone who joined the conversation, regardless of what camp you're in. Thank you to Upkar Singh, thank you to Gagan Singh, thank you to Pritpal Singh, Dharminder Singh, as well as Dr. G, and everyone else who contributed, as well as Gursevik Singh. Yeah, that about it wraps it up for today's discussion. We went over 3 hours. And yeah, we'll see you guys back again next week. If you guys have any closing thoughts or anything to say, or if you have any feedback, you can either let us know here or you can send me a message and we can talk about it later. Thank you. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.